instrumental, and they really like put some serious effort in. I enjoy it. Really enjoy it. I found the DJ Shadow introducing, and I was like, whoa, this slaps. Hey, Crimson Shad. Hey, look, somebody else who got coaching on the first time viewer. You guys are crazy. Yeah, I know Kenny Beats. I have my brother-in-law is like super into the new music scene, and so he'll send me stuff that he thinks I might like, and I go through it a lot of the EDM rap kind of stuff. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna be collabing with Custa today. I'll be hopping over in just a second with Custa. We're gonna be going over the London Spitfire versus the Toronto Defiant. Now, Sketch, thank you for the sub, mate. I appreciate it. I just saw you followed, so I appreciate it. So a lot of you guys talked about like how I was never gonna review a London game. Well, I changed my mind with Custa because they won like pretty convincingly the last 3 maps. So I will review London as long as it's a hype game. If it's a game that London loses or really struggles with, I'm not going to review a London game. But if it's something that's mostly positive, I'm going to do it. It's going to be fun. Have you ever reviewed a console play before? Yeah, I've reviewed several. Yeah, good to see everybody. This should be fun. I'll be hopping in Custa's stream. I will not be checking chat as much. I mean, I'll be reading it, but I won't be able to answer because I need to be focusing on the collaboration. You guys know how it rolls. But hopefully we'll talk a little bit about London. We'll talk a little about the meta. So if you guys weren't here for my stream before last, you need to check it out if you're super interested in Junkrat, holy cow, Junker Queen Goats and all the above. Because if I don't talk about it on stream today, I talked about it a week and a half ago. So highly recommend that you do that. Also, ! Coaching, as I say in the title, if you haven't done that already, the sessions are actually booking up really quickly. So that's been awesome. I'm already booked up for this Thursday and booked up for next Tuesday as well. There's a few slots available Thursday in advance. And I will fill up the following weeks on first come first serve basis. So what London game is being reviewed? The one they just won versus Toronto to get to Toronto. So yeah. But yeah, okay. I guess I will message Custa and let him know that I am ready. I am ready when you are, and we're gonna hop over. I think he's gonna have some questions for me. It's gonna be a little bit impromptu. We don't really have anything planned, but whatever. Yeah, I've been hyped for the collab as well. Custa, you guys know, I'm a big fan of Custa. He's probably my favorite guy in terms of the talent. I mean, I think the talent overall for Overwatch League is actually quite good. I really love Custa. I mean, coming from a pro player background, going into talent / casting is always a fun thing. All right, I'm gonna hop into his Discord. He's gonna drag me in, and then we're gonna get rolling. So he's gonna screen share through Discord, and then I'm gonna screen share the screen share. So hopefully this works. Yeah. All right, we're gonna hop over. Yo, what's going on?
Not much. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. I gotta turn you up on Discord just a little bit, a little quiet. It kills me that Discord going from like 100 to 200% is like such a bald-faced lie. It's like at most like 15%.
It's just like it's such an arbitrary number. It feels like.
Yeah, it's like it's all these open source softwares, man. It's like OBS. It's like a dice roll. I turn it on. Is my face cam gonna work? I guess not. No.
Not today, apparently.
No. It's a nice way of saying that I'm just looking a little bit ugly today, I suppose. But yeah, I appreciate doing this. I'm super excited, to say the least.
No, it's awesome to have you on. I appreciate you reaching out. Yeah. Obviously, it's going to be awesome to get some insight from you. Like, you know better than anyone else, like how this meta plays out. You got a lot of insight to London, so I'm looking forward to sort of like deep diving into that.
Of course.
Do you got my stream? Can you see on the stream what I'm looking at least right now?
I can see on the Discord stream. Yeah. Okay. Looks all good to me.
We're gonna do London, Toronto. Let's go with you.
Yes.
You talk about your boys.
Yes.
I think we'll probably just get a go. Are you good to go if we just like launch the YouTube and we'll just go into discussion?
Of course, I'm down for it.
All right, sweet. Let me open this on YouTube and then we'll go. All right.
Right out.
YouTube voice going?
Yeah, always gotta drop it an octave. Hello, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Costa. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another VOD review. We have a special guest for this one. We have Spillo from the London Spitfire. Well, ex-London Spitfire. You were just a coach with them recently. Unfortunately, got released. You want to introduce yourself to anyone who might not know who you are?
Yeah. I mean, I'm Spillo from the London Spitfire. I've been into Overwatch coaching for quite a long time and been into coaching in general quite a long time before that. had a great time working with London. Yeah, as crazy as it seems, I had a great time working with the boys last season. Finished up the second half of the season, managed to pull off a win, and overall was a really great positive and learning experience. And then obviously this season, getting to work with Chris, getting to work with Commander X, and just obviously the results that we had. I think like overall phenomenal learning experience. Budget mode hits. Losing the job sucks, but overall, what an amazing experience. And super into content creation and super into coaching. And I really, really enjoy talking about Overwatch. So hoping to provide some insight and inside resource on, I guess, the meta, the teams, the league, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to picking your brain. I guess I kind of want to start here with like the London Spitfire, so this is a team that, as you said, last year, we don't talk about last year as much for that team. Obviously, like you had some good pieces, but you're still waiting for Sparker to come of age, didn't really get the wins. How did this transformation happen, right? Because you guys are now, London's like 11-7 or something like that now. They've just qualified for the Toronto LAN, like... How did you guys turn the team around, considering you didn't change that many players?
It's all about like the ingredients. I think even maybe ingredients isn't the right word, because there's such big pieces, technically ingredients. Because if you think about, like you said, you had a lot of the good pieces, they had success in contenders, but then you actually apply that in a league where everybody's on 130 ping, 140 ping, Rippo and even higher. Nobody's in person training together like all of these over. I think that's such an important aspect, as well as building that camaraderie, building that synergy by being in the team in person. Everybody's in different places, in different states, in a different coaching staff, in a different situation. And the other thing people have to understand about Overwatch is like, oh man, Ash is looking fly.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I love that bug so much. It's like the Lucio, the like his net connects to the map and just like stretches all over the place. Anyway.
Yeah.
If it doesn't start really well in that circumstance, I think the rest of the season is just inevitably going to be poor, because it's hard when things are that negative, the extenuating circumstances are that negative. It's just a downward spiral, right? And I come on, Sparker comes on at about the same time, a little bit past the midway point of the season, and we definitely were playing better, but it was never quite enough, right? We were always played our best game against the Shock. Well, guess what? We go down to the map 5 last round, we lose one team fight and we lose. So everybody writes it off as a loss. And the same thing happens versus Toronto Defiant. We lose to nothing map 4. Same thing happened to the Dallas Fuel. In fact, we should have beaten the Dallas Fuel, but it's still a loss, right? A loss is a loss. And that hurts your confidence, right? So it's like those games over and over and over again. And then it becomes a situation where players aren't motivated, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. It just kind of like compounds itself. A little bit of a hot take here, but I think like the Vancouver game, even at that point in time, like everyone's excited for the win, but that was actually some of the worst Overwatch we played all season. Like that should have been
that was a game. Yeah, I will say that like you guys definitely had played better than that day.
It was a 3-0 scrims versus Vancouver. That version of Vancouver were so easy. It was often we ended up blacklisting them as the London Spitfire last season. But we go into that season, it goes into, or that game, and it goes into a map 5. It just goes to show like it is so hard. It's like running with ankle weights, and every single game that you lose, the confidence gets a lower. You had a couple of kilos to the ankles, and it just gets worse. So what it did though is it built, like, I guess, a lot of strength of character for the players that we did keep around. Obviously, it built a lot of strength of character for me. It built a lot of strength of character for Hadi. It built a lot of strength of character for Sparker, and I think you're seeing the results of that investment this season.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see like a bunch of these players. Like, Hadi is obviously a very highly talked about player this season, but after last season, people were like very critical of him, and like he did struggle to have a season. And the fact that you guys were able to sort of pull him back from that as a team, pull in all these players, was absolutely awesome. So I think I'm going to start the VOD in a second, and I want to start, as we start, obviously we don't need to talk about the gameplay as much, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts about like the meta, right? Because that is obviously the big thing that has happened so far throughout the this tournament. We got the Junker Queen. It's created, like, how did this meta start? Because all the ARB players, I assume you guys saw what was happening in contenders first, and then you were like, did everyone just start playing that off the bat to see, or were people trying to iterate, do different things, and then everyone came to the same consensus that Junker Queen was the best?
Well, it isn't like a new thing in Overwatch League to just straight up copy from contenders because it's easy. But like, Overwatch meta has always revolved around like mobility and taking angles and DPS playing from different positions. But we now have a composition that even if you were to play a super spammy comp, like a Pharmacy, a Tracer, Sombra, Genji, whatever, Hanzo, there's too much sustain and too much speed for those DPS angles to really matter whatsoever. And teams did test. Like, I don't want to say that no Overwatch League team gave it due diligence. A lot did. Some of the teams that we were scrimming playing some Pharah. I know, for example, Dallas tried Winston double flex support, similar to what Florida was trying on Gibraltar a few times versus us. Yeah, they tried that in scrims. Did not go well. So that's the risk, though. Is like, is there comp that counters Junker Queen? Yes. Is there comp that could have countered Goats? Maybe, probably not. But it's the amount of return on investment, and then if it doesn't pay off, you're screwed, right? And that's the real catch.
And it's also like the idea that, like, as you said, even if it does work, like the value of, like, as you said, maybe there is a comp on Gibraltar that is better than this Junker Queen Jotes meta, right?
Right.
You're better off just practicing Jotes on every single map, applying it across every single map, and then if that means you're better at it across the board compared to just being able to win that one map. And like, did you see anyone else, like, other than Florida after that really like commit to, like, let's say Pharah, right? Like, a lot of people thought that Pharah might be the counter, but that was really the contenders like Pharah bug that existed that allowed that.
Exactly. And we did see teams early on trying Pharah, but even early on when teams were not that good at Jotes, they were still able to consistently beat the Pharah comps. And you could make the argument that those teams weren't that good at Pharah either, but again, it's about the return on the investment. And it was a bit ironic for me to be saying this, considering we're the team that like played so much Rein and Winston metas, played so much Rein and Zarya metas. But I think the difference is that, like, when we initially tried Rein, we were on comfort heroes. Those heroes were good for us. And to be honest with you, the Rein comp wasn't that good, but Rein was. And Rein could do a lot of things that allowed the comp to work. When you're playing these other comps, I just don't think that there's a lot of heroes that can really stand out and like carry the fights in the way that we were able to make things work. And also those are all comfort heroes for us, right? I don't think a lot of teams are going to have like a Pharah one trick, right? That's going to just make it work. We are all on comfort hits. The thing that you'd have to do to counter Jotes would mean that most players are on weird heroes, and that just is never going to work.
Yeah, it's just too hard. Going back to like the Reinhardt of like the previous stages, is that like Hardy being like, I think this will work, or is this like a collaboration within the team being like, I think this can work? Or how did that come to be?
It's actually really a collaboration. Like, this is something that like we as coaches and all the players are kind of involved in talking about, like what feels good. I think early on there was a decent amount of Reinhardt being played from like several teams. I think Paris was playing some Reinhardt. I want to say even Dallas was playing some Reinhardt. Houston would bring out the Rein every now and again. Teams felt like Reinhardt was strong in Overwatch 2, and they were right, but there was obviously no team besides us that was willing to give it due diligence. And I could be honest with you, there were definitely times where we as coaches are like, maybe this just isn't gonna work. Like, you know, we have a bad scrim versus Shock, you know, we're 0-6 in maps from, like, we're just getting rolled by double flex support. But like, we really believe that like we could make it work when it counted, and ultimately we did. And heck, you know, even in times where the Reinhardt just wasn't going to work, right? The hard double flex support meta towards the end of the Hawaii is like, we got to breed out the bone back. Like, even we could not make the make work on mini maps. But you know, that's where like good team fundamentals pays off, because even if you got to put Backbone and Zen, he was actually a pretty decent Zen. He wasn't terrible.
Yeah, he did well, yeah.
But the team play carries us right there. Like, our communication was just on a different level than I think a lot of teams. And even though the result for Hawaii wasn't amazing, we were relatively pleased with their performance in that meta. And I will say, there were times in scrims, and this is no joke, where we would beat Shock and double flex support meta in scrims. We'd go like 4-2. Not every time, not even most of the time, but occasionally. And those were always, that was a good feeling.
It was funny. I actually remember being in at the kickoff clash in Dallas, and I was talking to Danny, and Danny comes in. He's like, I was just talking to the Korean players, and they were telling me that like London is like really good right now. I'm like, London? They're like, yeah, they're legit right now, and it's like, holy shit. Going into this stage, because you know you just said like at some point you got to put your foot down and be like, hey, maybe this isn't gonna work. Is that what you guys? In your first match against the Florida Mayhem of this stage, you guys did pull out the Reinhardt, the May on Colosseo.
Yeah.
Was that a moment of like you got rolled and you're like, okay, guys, time to hang this one up?
Yeah, and I don't think I'm leaking too much here by saying that like when it comes to Colosseo, we're just pretty confident that Reinhardt was good on that map. But we did have practice on Junker Queen on that map as well. At that point in time, and this is going to kind of segue into what I want to talk about with this meta and why it was such a dice roll earlier on, is like so much of it is mentality, so much of it is like confidence, especially earlier on. We were a team that I feel like, if I do say so myself, little bit of, you know, back padding here, but I felt like we had a really strong grasp of the meta, the way the DPS angles, the timing, the ult economy. We had a huge jump on that compared to, I think, most teams. But what we realized is that we almost overcoached. What happened is I think we moved too fast and started talking about like the really nuances of positioning and like trying to treat it like goats, but we just still weren't always on the same target, on the same timing, and we were still struggling with like being on the same page, right? And so when you start getting ahead of yourself, the details like just don't matter anymore. And so what ended up happening in that Florida game is like we just played like crap. We just were a horrible team. Like the level of play was just so incredibly low there. And so we go into Colosseo, and you know, I think Chris goes, you know, we know Rein works here. We have a lot of experience playing Rein here. We're playing horribly in the mirror. We have to throw in a wild card. And obviously it doesn't end up working out, but I think that probably made the most sense given how we were playing in the mirror on that day.
Yeah, no, I get that. So let's break down this Junker Queen meta. So like, talk to me from like a coach's perspective and a player's perspective, because obviously like we, you know, as the desk and like casters and that kind of stuff, we're analyzing at a very surface level of like the Genji needs to get value out of the blades, defensive ultimates, making sure you're cycling correctly. What are the things that most people are missing? What are the important pieces that like really dictate who is the better team in this meta?
Sure. And you can even see it actually just in this fight that we're seeing there is like this neutral goes really poorly for us, and it's really not complicated. Obviously crossing a choke is bad, but the first thing that stands out to me right there, actually I haven't even seen this game. I saw the result, I was out of town. But the first thing that stands out to me is that Backbone actually dashes out when Hadi goes in. And that's something that I've been saying in my stream over and over again when people ask about Jotes. It's hive mind. It's hive mind. It's everybody's on the same page, on the same time, pushing in, clearing an angle. Even if you're not even like actually pushing, if you're just pressuring, if you're just shooting, everybody has to be on the same timing and preferably on the same target. And what ends up happening is a lot of these teams, even good teams like Glads early in the meta, mechanically, right? Maybe Reiner wasn't performing up to snuff on Junker Queen, but like mechanically they got skewed, right? They've got a Funny Astro, they've got Kevster. There's no weak points there.
Yeah.
But what was happening is their timing was just not good. They're on different pages, they're on different timing. The main tank's in, the DPS are not in, the supports are in, and the DPS are out, you know. And that's what's happening, is a lot of teams, this meta is so punishing if you're not all engaged all in the same time or all out all in the same time, because this meta has so many like push pull tools, right? You think about your amp speed, your shout, your Genji dash, your dynamite, your surgeon. All of these are engaged tools, even or disengaged tools, right? They could do either way. But if you mess it up, you're cooked. Like you're really cooked. There's absolutely nothing you can do. If your Junker Queen is isolated, she's cooked. She's done. Like that's where a lot of fights are just won and lost off of that, and really nothing else.
Is that what you attribute to the Dallas Fuel success? Like, you know, we always talk about them with their hive mind. They have always been the team that like just fundamentally works on the same level.
100%. I mean, it easily, like you look at that team and obviously they have Hanbin, who's just playing on another level, and even Edison, somebody who you wouldn't necessarily say is a strong point, but the guy looked insane in Ashe. But I think the majority of their success, it's the hive mind. They are consistently, anything that involves the Lucio speed, anything that involves in and out, they will perform at an S tier level at it consistently all the time. And that is, I think, the difference maker for that team for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So the thing that enabled the Jotes is the commanding shout from Junker Queen, right?
Yes.
Like that is like the big thing. So I've sort of like theorized this myself of like the back and forth. Like, when do you think is the right time? Like, should you be engaging with the shout to give you initiative to try and isolate someone? Are you wanting to play it reactively? Are you wanting to just use it as much as humanly possible? Like, where did you guys come to the line is?
I'm gonna break it down to like two levels of understanding. So like this is the initial level of understanding people are still figuring out. The most important thing is, okay, like maybe we're just all going to always play first tempo. Okay, so like let's just make sure that whenever we're playing, engaging with shout, we're going 3, 2, 1, and like everybody's in at the same time, using their cooldowns in the best way possible. And I think that's kind of where the evolution started, right? Okay, we're going to go in with our shout, but we're going to make sure that when Hadi's in, Admiral's in, Sparker's got his aggressive E, Backbone is he's got a good angle for pressuring backline, and if we're going to use our ults, the same kind of thing. We're going to use one ult, they're going to match with another ult, but we know that we're staying because we have that second ult that can layer on top of their ult to win. And I think that's like the first understanding. But the way like Overwatch always evolves, even in a meta like this, which feels very brawl and gross and grindy meta. I think back to GOAT's meta, right? The way it always evolves at the higher level is people get better at not only learning how to use their cooldowns better and more efficiently, but they learn how to position better. And so what ends up happening is, and you'll see this, like especially with a team like a Toronto or a Dallas, is they learn how to take angles better. They learn how putting my Genji on a high ground, learn how using my Ashe on a flank, using my Sojourn on a flank, even splitting my backlines sometimes, not always, but sometimes, creates something that a great coach that I'm a big fan of, Egoist Cat, and he talks about something called passive advantage. And what ends up happening is a team that has better DPS positions ends up, if neither team uses Shout, the team with the better DPS position is slowly going to bleed you dry, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to use Shout just to survive. And that's what ends up happening is the teams get a Shout advantage, not because they shouted first or they shouted second. No. It's the positions and the cooldown use that they had that forced the other team to have to use Shout. Otherwise, they would have just lost. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay.
So I paused here because I'm actually curious if that, like what you're talking about, is relative to here, because this is actually a hold that I've seen London do that no one else has really done. You guys actually position Backbone and he steps up to this thing. Is that like intentionally to do what you're saying, of like you're giving him this superior positioning so that they have to use Shout earlier to try and deal with him, and then you can react to that?
Right. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure like exactly what the intention of this hold is, but like theoretically we could see this hold as being Backbone is in a position to where he can do more spam damage to their Queen or to their Ashe. So if he's able to do more spam damage, well then guess what? We're going to win the neutral, or they're going to have to use Shout defensively, and then we can Shout on top of that and win. This particular spot, that's a little bit odd. This might be due to some scouting that they might have had on Toronto, like how they rotate. So, I mean, it worked okay, but yeah.
Okay, that actually triggered an interesting thought, because we actually talked about this on Plat Chat today. Like at London Spitfire, how much do you guys do in terms of preparation for individual teams? Of like, because when I was a player in a team, I had different levels of preparation for different teams that I played for. Like some teams were like, it's more about focusing on us and playing our fundamentals right, compared to we need to look at how they play and how to isolate and use our strategy to undermine theirs. Like how much did London Spitfire do both of those?
I think we were definitely on the far end of the spectrum when it comes to preparation. I think especially when you have a scout who's as like talented and as skilled as Commander X is, like you're a fool not to use your scouting information. He's really good at it with stats and everything. But I think even us, who I think probably scout more than probably any team in the league, scouts less than people think. I mean, we're talking maybe an hour VOD review, maybe 45 minutes of discussion tops over the course of an entire week for an opponent. Because like what you said, it really is, it's more about the big stuff. All right, we probably think they might do this rotate, or they definitely seem to be a little bit impatient with this ultimate, but you can't, it's just impossible in Overwatch to go into the nitty gritty. It's not like, you know, footballer, like where you can tell like their tendencies when it comes to, you know, corner kicking, or it's not like any other sport where you can know what play they're running. It's more about very big tendencies and then focusing on your own gameplay like after that, I guess.
So to sort of explain that to like the average viewer, so so less so about like, hey, when they come to this corner, they tend to, you know, these players tend to go over here, blah blah blah. Is it more about like, although when he plays Genji, he has multiple examples of him exposing himself by going too aggressive in this kind of situation? Is that it?
Yes, exactly. Or especially if we know the map specific they're going to play. Like that, like I said, there might be specific scouting if we've seen them play an official that they really like this rotate on this map. And that's about as specific as it gets. Outside of that, it's very general, basic stuff, because I think in the middle of a match, video games are like, just esports in general is just unbelievably mentally engaging, and you can't be engaged in your own play. And like the three little details or tendencies, it's just not possible. Like we're not AI, sadly. So, you know.
Yeah, because I remember when I was on the Valiant, actually, when I was like first joining that team, we actually had Damon come in. He used to be a coach for that team, and he did the same thing of like, the problem that we had was when he first started doing them, he was just overwhelming us with information. He's just like, we are in like an hour debrief of him talking about all the little things about all the teams do. And then we would come out of that and like, I would look across at like halfway through and Kariv's just like lying down, like eyes closed and stuff like that. Like people just don't have the ability to absorb that level of information, right? Like, and then apply it in the game. So it's interesting to sort of see if that, like, that's sort of the the interesting consensus that you guys came to as well.
Yeah, there's just a big gap between knowledge and skill, right? If you can have, even if you were able to maintain focus during an entire review like that, you're just not going to be able to actually apply it. So then the result is almost meaningless. And I think that's like the really careful line that we had to tread throughout the season, because Chris, X, and myself were super intense, passionate coaches, but players have to be able to understand and process it. And really come up with stuff on their own too. Otherwise, it's just like you've done a lot of work, but it's really meant nothing, right? The return isn't there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, okay, I want to talk about the macro of Jotes a little bit with the support ults. Like, what do you think the way support ults are going to be used? Because, like, it feels like right now, like, at first, people were trying to save the beat for Rampage, but it actually feels like it's moved away from that a little bit, that people are using the beat for the Blade and the rally for the Rampage. Am I, like, coming to the right idea with that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the circumstance and the team. I think, like, overall, people have tendencies, but a lot of it is so situational dependent. For example, like, if they have both Blade and Rampage, if they Blade, I'm going to beat it, right? I'm going to have to beat it and just pray that we have Shout or Rally for their Rampage afterwards. I think for the support ult specifically, the big one, I think beat for Blade is great. If they don't have Blade, beat for Rampage is also good as well. But I think what makes beat unique, if we just can isolate that one, is it's not just a counter. It's a counter, and then what are you going to do with it? And that's why
I think an engage tool, right?
Right, exactly. Because if they Rampage, okay, yes, it counters the Rampage, but you also have temporary HP after that you really ought to be using at that point in time. That's why I think like Beat is probably the more powerful ultimate, and the same thing goes with Blade as well, right? Very rarely do we see a Blade and then a Beat, and then the guy with the Blade just keeps going, right? He keeps chopping with the Blade. No. If you see that Beat, you are out, because you know the team with that Beat is going to be right on top of you in a second's time.
Yeah. I think we've seen Genji's doing better about recognizing that as well. Like at the start of the stage, Genji's were like, fuck it, maybe I can kill this one guy. Like, oh, the Lucio beat it, I'm just going to slash him down 4 times and hope for gold. And then the Genjis just started dying. And then they're like, well, fuck.
That's not
now
working
I
at
gotta change.
all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Rally is super weird. Rally is like the one where Rally is actually, ironically, is like a really good etc. ult, I guess I could say. It's pretty good. Oh, that was a nice shot. Sparker's so good.
Fucking nuts,
Yeah. I think Rally is great at countering Blade if you also have Shout and you all play to counter Blade. Rally can be also good at countering Junker Queen ult if you also have Shout and you play around it. Rally is actually really great at countering a beat engage. That doesn't happen often, but if there is an opportunity for the enemy team to beat engage, Rally is like, all right, you got your temporary HP, we got our temporary HP, but ours lasts longer, so screw you, right? So it's like, same thing with like a Sojourn ult as well. If you're able to hard engage into a Sojourn ult with Shout, she's not gonna be able to get a one shot in time. But Rally is like the ult that is really, really tricky if they've got Junker Queen ult if you don't have Shout. Really tricky if you have Blade if you don't have Shout. So it's a really tricky ult to use. I think it's really, really circumstantial.
It's like the most complicated game of rock, paper, scissors you'll ever play, while also having to factor in the fact that the Sojourn could just kill your support off the bat as well. So,
exactly.
And that's what makes Overwatch beautiful, right? And that's what makes it great. I actually have another interesting question relative to this, because I actually don't know the answer to this. So Junker Queen supports have gotten really good at just pushing the Junker Queen around when she's trying to Rampage. Can you explain to me how the fucking hitbox works with the Rampage? Because it feels like it's a little fucky, and I don't have any understanding. Like, it just seems very inconsistent from what I've seen, but I can't play her to understand it.
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit of insight, but to be honest with you, there are just as many situations in Overwatch League scrims and games where Overwatch League players are like, what just happened? How did that hit me? Or how did that not hit me? It happens in scrims and games too. It seems to be pretty wonky, but a couple things. One is it definitely seems to have a vertical hitbox as well as a horizontal hitbox. So like if you're on high ground, but the high ground's not very high, it can hit you. So like let's say you're at the top of these stairs, like right here, and you can be hit by a Junker Queen ult, even if it's a little bit below you. So that's some of the weirdness. The other thing that we've noticed is Brig can technically block the ult. Like at least for herself, right, or anybody behind her. It's like a little bit like a sound barrier or anything else where it's like it blocks the application,
like the LOS of it, right? Like it counts as like an LOS.
It's really strange though. It's really difficult to do, and it seems to be a little bit inconsistent. At least we're not good enough to figure it out. But those are some things that you kind of, it's really about like, and a lot of it's also like latency and ping helps or hurts as well. A lot of times where like the supports, everybody's ready to bash out or Sojourn's ready to shift out, and you're like, whoa, there's no way I got hit by that. I totally dodged that, you know, and you still get hit. So it's a bit wonky for sure.
Okay, so another follow-up of fucky things with Junker Queen. The double shout bug, which has obviously been a thing. Not talked about as much publicly, but I'm sure internally with the players and the teams, I'm sure it's a big point of contention. How often do you think it's happening? Have you noticed anyone able to replicate it effectively? From what I heard from someone else is that it does happen. It's very difficult to replicate in like an actual game.
Exactly. It's very difficult to replicate because you have to think about like how you're going to be using your shout, whether you're using your shout to kite, or whether you're using the shout to push. A lot of the times you're not going to be doing either of those things directly on a corner. You're either going to be past the corner or kiting away from the corner. And so if you're not able to do that, then it's really, really, really tricky to do. So I'm sure it's been done purposefully in scrims. Maybe somebody was trolling and just wanted to give it a shot, but in an official purposefully, there's no way. Like I would be absolutely shocked. You could probably count the number of times it's actually happened in an official on your thumbs, and then you're going to count it. It hasn't happened at all purposefully, I would bet.
Yeah, because we saw it. We were watching a VOD yesterday, and I actually saw it happen on Proper as he went to take a duel with Sparkle in that duo, and it kind of like actually made a difference. So it is annoying, but it's obviously one of those pain points of playing on a beta version.
I mean, Dallas is just that good, I guess. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let me throw another curveball question about you, Junker Queen. I'm just going to keep throwing it at you. How do you fix Junker Queen? You're all of a sudden, you're Aaron. Obviously, the issue is the temporary instant health that comes in from Junker Queen. Do you think that there's a way to keep the temporary health without keeping her busted in like a brawl meta, or do you think there needs to be altercations that happen?
I think like I've historically like always admitted that I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to like balance ideas. But I think like it's clearly her AoE shout is the problem. I don't think it's necessarily the speed. I think the speed is an interesting idea and it's cool, but I do think the temporary HP is too much. I think you could toy with things, something like 50 temporary HP would feel pretty harsh, but would kind of keep her identity. Again, the problem with it is just that like you're talking about so many metas, double flux support, Winston dive, the Sigma meta like Briggs in, all these metas that are talking about DPS angles and DPS duels and support helping their DPS and taking angles themselves, and now we have a meta where like against everything that's not Junker Queen goats, it's group up as 5 and run them down, right? And it just ignores all, and that's just something that, especially in Overwatch 2, you're not allowed to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. There's no meta or hero that has allowed you to do that, and that comes from Shout. So it has to be some way of where the temporary HP is good, but it doesn't negate people taking off angles on you, right? You still have to respect those off angles. It has slightly less sustain, something around that affecting that, I think.
Because that was the same thing that happened with Brig in a way, right? Where it's like when she first came in, it was just too much healing. The instant pack was just so oppressive that like it was almost impossible to kill enough people consistently before you just lost the fight.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I think if you compare like how Junker Queen goats would play up against a Zen meta, would play up against a Pharah meta, and then compare that to how our Rhine comp even with Mei, it's just night and day, right? Like we do not group up. We had to take angles with Reinhardt. We had to have our soldier flanking, our Cassidy flanking. We had to have Bap Lucio even split sometimes, right? Dueling off angles. But Junker Queen, screw you. We don't care about you. You can have all the high ground you want,
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, interesting. Okay. Let's keep going with the meta while we're here then.
Sure.
Sojourn Ashe has been a point of contention for a lot of people. The consensus that most of us have come to is map specific. Situations like this where you're watching Toronto Defiant, they can sit on the high ground, they got those long sight lines, they can get these big kind of dynamites. Is that really like the realistic of it? Or do you think there's a point in which you can just force Ashe everywhere if you're good at it?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of the times these kind of questions are just common sense, and heck, even the platinum peasants can probably come up with the right answers. I mean, it's really, if you got a good high ground, if you got a good angle, if you can, if like a team like Dallas who's really, really playing at a high level and is able to kind of keep their Ashe supported and not just die to a solo Genji dash, then Ashe does a lot of damage, way more than Sojourn. I think Bob in a lot of circumstances is arguably the more consistent ultimate than Sojourn Railgun as well. It just comes down to like, first off, does that map require you to move around a lot, right? Like, can you imagine if Sparker was an Ashe right now with the high ground above him. You know, it'd be miserable trying to move constantly, push, pull, in, out, up, down. You know, that would be tough for Ashe. And it's a lot easier for Sojourn. But like you said, with the Toronto, mostly kind of sitting on your heels. You're just kind of sitting, you know, hitting the mouse 1 button. So maybe in that situation, Dynamite's just a lot better. Just the M1 pressure is just that much better. But I do think, like you said, I think that, like, wrap it up is like it is team dependent as well. Dallas is playing it in a lot of circumstances where it doesn't make sense to play it, but they peel so well that it's like the guy just, if he hits his shots, holy cow, he was hitting his shots. The hero's it's just better.
That makes sense. On that talking, you brought up Dallas. I gotta know who do you have for the tournament? Do you have Dallas or Shock? Because those are really the two big front runners in the West.
I mean, I think
Edison obviously was crazy in that Shock match, but do you think he can keep doing that?
Well, the thing with Shock is, like, obviously that was a huge benefit, or for Dallas, excuse me, it's like a huge benefit when Edison is popping off like that. But I don't actually think the team always relies on that. I think that's what makes them so good is obviously when it happens, sick. But if it doesn't, Dallas still has so many things to fall back on when it comes to, like, how they approach these, I guess, hive mind sort of meta. So, like, I mean, this is where, like, the intangibles really kick in, right? We were talking about last season with London, right? Like, how do these teams perform at LAN? How is their training structure? Is anybody just gonna kind of like enter that flow state at the right time? And that's where, like, that's what makes Overwatch a little frustrating, because there's always that element of randomness. It's the human element, right? We're not AIs. But it's also what makes it really exciting too, right? I think Dallas should be favored going to this. I think, like, there's a really high chance that they just run away with it. But then there's also a chance that Shock hits a flow state, that, you know, London finds the key and they just destroy everybody. And even a team like Toronto is a team in Scrimbucks as early on, and even in their matches, they were for real, like, the first half of this stage. Obviously, it wasn't their day recently, but they were, especially in Scrim, they were terrible. Like, in terms of, like, they're terrible to play, I guess. Like, they were, they were smoking us in scrims, and we were doing pretty well. So you just never know. It really depends. But I think Dallas is, I mean, they're set up for success. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It's a great meta for them. You know, we talked about their success being in the hive mind, and with Edison, you're really picking up that hit scan role. And I see what you mean, but I don't know. Maybe I'm a Dallas hater. I just something about me. I have that feeling of that San Francisco Shock flow state that you said. I can feel it coming in a way. That is, it might be scary. Sorry, you go.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, like, I think Shock is like a good example of a team that, like us, ironically, when we were playing San Francisco in the double flex support meta, and all of a sudden we've got Backbone and Zen and we're doing all right. I think San Francisco is kind of a similar situation, right? They don't even have, like, a quality main support, and yet they're doing just fine. They're doing absolutely just fine. You know, they're out there pounding. Obviously, it helps when you have proper, but I think it would be disingenuous to say that, like, the coaching staff and all the other players in Shock haven't stepped up a great deal and played really, really well. And so I think, like, hey, they took a map off of Dallas, and that game looked competitive, and Edison was popping heads, and Shock was still in there. I think, like, for sure. Shock hits a flow state, Shock could win it.
Okay, so let's talk about the intangibles and bring it back to the London Spitfire. So, like, you talked about how, like, the culture is, like, such a big thing. Is that something that you guys, like, focused on coming into this season of, like, hey, we're not gonna be the holy shit, are we gonna get a win in this season, and, like, hey, we're gonna be a competitive team? Like, you said you were doing good in scrims. Did that start early, or did that take a lot of time to get to that point?
It took time. I think it took a lot of patience. I remember the very first talk that Chris had with the team, and it was a real reality check. You know, Chris didn't come in with, like, hey guys, we're gonna crush the league and we're gonna be the greatest, and we're gonna totally turn it around, and we're gonna. He went in with a message of, like, guys, we're a budget team. We're probably going to lose a lot of games, and if you aren't able to find a way to just deal with that frustration and deal with the difficulty in scrims and officials, then you just aren't going to belong here. And it was a reality check. I mean, it was tough love, right? It was a reality check of, guys, like, we're going to have to be comfortable with losing if we want to win, I guess would be the, because it's a long season, right? We can start off bad and improve. We can even, the thing is like, are there mechanical players better than our players right now? Yeah, but 6 or 7 months is a long time to improve at Overwatch 2, right? So, and I think, like, over time, like we talk about, like, the culture, right? Like, Chris was always on it, always keeping on people's toes, encouraging, improving, and then also, like, you know, a little bit of negative feedback, a little bit of positive feedback, and I mean, really over time, I guess you just start to have people that like really buy into like, this is what we're all about. You know, we're the gritty team. We're the ones. I think the Reinhardt one was a really big psychological tune to us because it was like, that's our thing, man. We've got our special little sauce, right? So like there was us and the rest of the league, and we found a way to kind of leverage that into like a psychological advantage because it's like, yeah, we have our own way of playing the game. You know, we don't play by your rules, right?
And that's an important thing as well to go into, right? When you are that team, like we've all seen teams that like, you know, let's say like Paris Eternal this year, for example. It's like they're a team that they had a lot of confidence from last season, but there was almost that level of expectation on them now, right? It's like they did well last season. Now you guys have to back that up. And all of a sudden they put that pressure on themselves to be like, oh shit, we're not performing that well. You start losing some scrims, you start losing that confidence. And you see, I'm sure you can speak more to this. Of like, I remember when I was a player of like, as you can see players losing confidence in their own gameplay as they start losing scrims, as they start losing matches. Like, you know, fans like to act like, oh my God, they're depressed because they lost this match. It's like, no, this person's been depressed for 3 weeks because they've been getting
100%.
shit on in scrims because they have no confidence in themselves.
100%.
Like,
100%.
And like, is that something that you're just trying to like bundle up and make sure that your players are aware of? Like, that's what you said, the Christopher mentality.
Really, yeah. I mean, I think even like London Spitfire last season, I wasn't there for this. I mean, for the first 7 months of their training, but I think that was what Paris was this season, right? There's expectations. Oh, British Hurricane. Oh, they're going to the league. And from what I know, they were doing relatively well in scrims early on. But then, you know, it doesn't quite translate into matches, and then it starts to snowball. And then I think with us, it was the opposite. Like I used to joke that we had the easiest job of anybody early in the season because everybody puts us in last place, and that's every coach's dream. Because it's like there's no expectations, right? If we lose, okay, everybody's like, all right, sick, you know. It's the real tricky part, like you said, though, is the Paris, right? And for us, it's like, or for London, it was really kind of Hawaii, and I guess this stage as well, where now people know that we're not bad, right? So now the expectations are a little higher, and then there's a little bit more pressure, and so you really need players that are. One thing I've always said is like better people make better players, and that's where like you have players like the Hotties and the Sparkers and the coaches like Chris that are like just have developed this iron mental and developed this maturity. And so that carries over into officials, right? Like that carries in. And that's the thing is like, as a coach, can you develop your players to be better, more mature, like more patient humans? Because like that's where the confidence goes. If you're not a confident person, if you're, you know, lazy, or you don't have a lot of things that you do besides Overwatch, you haven't really developed as a person, you haven't really developed your character, then the second that adversity hits, you crumble.
Where does that culture come from for London? Because obviously, you know, you guys don't have the budget for like a sports psychologist and a personal trainer and those kind of things that some of these other teams have. But, you know, I see you guys posting, like your players posting photos of going to the gym. They always seem to be having a great time. Like, is there a player or is there a coach just like leading that charge, like promoting that culture? I
mean, obviously it always starts with your head coach, right? Like he's the one that always prioritizes where things is. And Chris is a relatively physically active guy. He's very, very confident. He kind of exudes like, I got this under control and we're going to be working hard. And so everybody kind of follows suit, but it really is a collaborative effort. I mean, everybody, I'm a big workout guy. I'm big into mental performance. When I was working with him, that was something that I was always working on with the players one-on-one, is confidence, mental performance, individual goals. Even things like, this sounds really corny, and I won't talk about the player, but one of the players that I was working with, for a period of time, we did nothing but talk about like, your job is to take walks and to get sleep, and it was like a daily check-in, like, how did you sleep? You know, were you taking a walk? Were you doing this? And little things like that. It's just like every single player has to be involved in it. Every single player has to kind of buy in, and it doesn't happen immediately, right? Like, I think Sparker had an interview with Yiska today, and he was talking a little bit about how, like, oh, when I first started, it was just me and Hottie at the gym, and then now there's this player and then this player and everybody. And I think that's kind of like what you see, right? Is there's one or two confident players, Chris setting the environment. It doesn't really catch. We win a game. Okay, maybe now there's a little bit more confidence. Maybe there's a little bit less degenerative behavior, a little bit more communication between guys dealing with their problems. One thing that Chris was always like adamant about, even early on in the season, was like bedtimes, right? We are a very non-degenerate bedtime team. I know we start our day, and we are in VOD review at 9 a.m. PST, and those guys are in bed, most of them probably asleep like before 11:30. Which is crazy for gamers, right? Like you and I both.
That's a hard thing to sell.
Yeah, that is insane. And that was one thing that Chris was like, yeah, we're not bending on that. I'm not having to sell you on this. You're just going to have to do it. But the rest of the culture, yeah, that kind of came in time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Like that, like, you know, talking from my experience of someone who has like seen that opposite culture, is like Dallas Fuel 2018 is like the opposite of end of the spectrum of what you guys went through. Of we didn't get predicted last. We got predicted first, and then when I signed to that team, I was like, I'm just gonna sit on the bench and I'm just gonna vibe out over here because you guys are gonna do great. And then internally, there was so many issues of, like, as you said, players not sleeping enough. We had certain players showing up and they're like, I slept like 2 hours last night, and then they're just like, they're shitty. They don't want to scrim. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to VOD review. Then you have players eating poorly. Like we had a bunch of players who just ate really poorly and they wouldn't want to eat any of the food that was supplied. And then like it really compounds into that kind of like culture, and then it like falls apart for you so quickly because those negative things just go. And like these things can be covered up by winning, right? Like if you're winning, it doesn't matter that some of your players' sleep schedules suck, that you're eating badly, that you're not going to the gym, because you guys are talented enough to win. But the teams that are the best have the best players and they have the correct culture, because that they really feed on top of each other. And then whenever you think of these teams that have like really good players that seem to fail, it usually comes from a management side of they're not treating the players, and they're giving the players what I like to call too much freedom of their choices. Of like, you need a parental figure, you need a hard-hitting head coach who doesn't run it like a boot camp, but respects the players and promotes healthy habits.
Yes, 100%. Like you need a lot of and that's where like I think player leadership is so crucial as well, because I think what you said is like the coach has to set the standard, has to be that parental figure, but it makes your job a million times easier when you've got, even if it's just one respected player kind of setting the standard. And I think that's where like everybody talks about like, you know, Chadi, you know, Chadi. Hadi has been that player really this season consistently. You know, when things are going really poorly, when scrims are people are getting frustrated, when people are degenning it up, you know, Hadi is always setting the good example, encouraging the guys, and like he has a tendency to be, he's a very critical guy and a very hard worker. So there's a tendency for players like that to be negative and critical and frustrated. That was something that Hadi struggled with last season, right? I'm putting in so much effort, I'm doing this and this and that, right? This season, he has improved himself to where he is the guy that's like encouraging, right? He's like, all right, guys, come on, we can do this. Like, always in scrims, always in officials. He's always been that guy, and like that makes that kind of work as a coaching staff for Chris so much easier. You get one player setting the tempo. Now you got two players, and now you've got 5 players working out and going to bed at a reasonable time. Are you going to be that 6th guy? There's no way, right?
And that's it. Like, especially like, as you said, when you have so many rookies, like you guys have so many like new players you brought Landon on in the middle of the stage. Like that really is important. Like Landon, I'm sure has just walked in as like, well, everyone's going to the gym. Well, I guess I go to the gym as well. Like it's such a team thing, or like it's such an important thing to have that positive culture, and like
100%.
You can see it in the results of you guys.
100%.
It's been awesome to see you guys turn it around. I guess this is a hard question for you because you're incredibly biased. But like, talk to me about Christopher, the head coach. Do you think he deserves Coach of the Year? Do you think he has that level of understanding while also providing that team culture that not many other coaches have? Obviously, it's hard to see what other coaches are doing. From your experience,
I think that's the point you just made is like my real misgiving. Like, obviously I'm going to be biased, but I think my major concern is that I'm not there inside the other teams. I'm not seeing those clutch moments when Krusty comes in, or the plan that even just the day-to-day boring things that Krusty or Face does that allows your team to be successful. But I will say that having worked with a lot of other coaches, being somewhat familiar with the impact that other coaches have in their team, I think like Chris is really like has to be the front runner. I mean, obviously it does make it easier for us when the expectations were so low that anything feels good. But I think it's not just what Chris did to make us not a dog tier team, right? It was what he's continued to do in transitioning our mindset from no expectations to some expectations to we could be top 4 or top 5 if we're on our game, right? And being able to smoothly like progress with us over the course of the season. I think like, even if you compare it to last season's Paris, right? Paris was obviously a team where, you know, Get Amazed and a lot of those players really stepped up in a big way, but nobody was going to take Paris seriously as a contender for any stage. I think there's been situations, not often, but where I felt like we could be at times the best team in the league. Not all the time, not consistently. Not as consistent, obviously, as a team like a Dallas or a Shock or the Gladiators, but there have been glimpses of where we've been playing at a high level, just objectively high level, right? And I think that's where I think Chris really deserves a lot of credit. Is he's been able to deal with the trashy experience in a like low mechanical ceiling team, and then transition that team into something that has continued to grow and continued to improve across metas. I think, to be honest with you, we've improved slightly from meta to meta, which I think is impressive enough alone, right? We're not just the Rhino TPs. Even when we were playing a lot of Rhino, it was like 60%, right? It wasn't 90%. It was, we had to still play Winston sometimes. We still had to play Ball. We had to play Junkerkoon. We had to play Sigma. We had to play D.Va. So I think like that's where I think Chris's like flexibility, and that's where I think his ability to build a team culture, right? Even if we get a bad read on a meta, we still have, I think, a lot more confidence and a lot more discipline than a lot of the teams, I think, and I think that carries over.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So a lot of people don't really understand what coaches do like in the league, because it's like it is a very unique thing. You have three coaches, you have a head coach, you have an analytical coach, you have all that kind of stuff. Like what in your opinion is like an assistant coach? Because we've talked about head coaches, they are very culture driven.
Yes.
They need to understand the game at a high level, but they don't need to be that super analytical guy.
Yes.
You're that guy for the team. What do you do for a team like the London Spitfire?
So I can say like a lot of it depends on coach to coach. I think Chris is definitely one of the more strategic leaned coaches that I've worked with. Like he's as good, if not better, than a lot of strategic coaches in the league. He really knows the game well. But from an assistant coach side of things, it's definitely like, it really, I think, is something that you can't like really buttonhole yourself into. You really have to kind of just read the coach, read the individual. I think Commander X is a great example of that, where he is and he's really an analyst. Like that's primarily his goal. And we're talking about a league that doesn't really employ analysts, right? Because they just don't have it. But Commander X is really, really, really good at running and finding value out of those numbers. And then you combine that with his excellent strategic coaching knowledge, and we have like a really unique niche in that we're able to just run and read numbers probably better than any team in the league. And so Commander X is he's kind of an odd one, right? He's not like traditional strategic coach or traditional analyst, and he's kind of a hybrid of both. And then I think I kind of fall into a similar category where I have a lot of confidence in my strategic knowledge. Anybody who's familiar with any of my content, I feel like I have a good grasp of the game, period, just on a big macro picture whole. But I also have, literally 4,000 or 5,000 hours in individual review experience over the past 3 or 4 years. Like I've done so many reviews of every hero. So I did almost all of, about 90% of our one-on-ones. And what I would also often do is like have those one-on-ones tying into what our strategic vision was for the composition that we're playing, so that we're making sure that everybody's on the same page. So I wasn't just a strategic coach, I wasn't just a micro coach, I was actually a one-on-one coach tying in what the strategy that Commander X or that Chris was coaching into our individual sessions. So it really just depends on the coach, depends on the proficiency, I guess.
Okay, absolutely. That's awesome. I don't know if this is like something that you don't want to say, but like I'm curious on like what your structure was in terms of like how many scrims you do a day, how many reviews would you do a day, when would you do them, when are you doing the one-on-ones, like what was your structure? Because every team is different in that regard, and I know some teams do less reviews, some teams like to do more scrims. Like where were you guys at?
I feel like I can answer this reasonably well. I think for most days, and this is something that was honestly like relatively critical in my like I guess quote unquote twit longer. Most days we did triple blocks. And I think it's disingenuous to say that that's never a good thing. I think that definitely with the lack of ranked, being able to get a mechanical edge in some ways is definitely something that made a lot of sense. I'm still on a journey myself to decide whether that was like the best thing, but I think like it wasn't an unreasonable decision. But we usually did triple blocks. We start off the day with about a 45-minute review. Sometimes it was 25, sometimes it was 55, but generally that hour block would be filled with team review. And then sometimes between those 3 blocks, we would do short little team reviews, sometimes, but that was at most once a day. Sometimes not even at all. Sometimes it would just be that one initial review and that would be it. So I think that hour between the scrims was usually for break or doing other things, which was good. That kind of compensated a little bit for the difficulty of running triple blocks. And then in terms of one-on-ones, a lot of that was super meta dependent. So there were times where I would work with a player like Landon 2 or 3 times in a week. Frequently, like 30, 40, usually not long sessions, but 30, 35 minutes, we just go, right? We really were like, okay, this is the goals. Okay, like let's check in to see how you were doing. Okay, it's looking good. Let's check back in a couple days to see how you're doing. Usually those check-in sessions would be a little faster. Sometimes it would be, it's just really, really short. So I'm gonna record a 10-minute video. I'm gonna send it to Admiral and some idea I had for this map or this matchup. And then, so it was on average to say at least probably about 1 per player per week on average, usually a little bit more. At least in terms of combining a little bit of feedback sessions with the one-on-ones. But then there was also times where I think this is like the irony here is like, I'm a firm believer of like, if the player has like full investment and involvement and their own play and they feel like they're really progressing and evolving on their own, don't touch it. I think like a good analogy is that we're not really, I'm trying to think of like, what we are as gardeners, as coaches. That should be the goal. That we are building and nurturing plants. And if the plant is growing healthily, you need to give it space. You need to let it grow. You need to let them take responsibility. So ironically, 2 of our star players are the Rein meta, especially the first stage, and Backbone and Hadi, right? Backbone's mid. Yeah. Whoa, Hadi's Rein. I coached those guys the least out of all of the players one-on-one. And it was because they were so individually invested in their own goals and the own things they're working on. They're doing their self-review. They're like, all right, I'm gonna try this, or I'm gonna try that, or I've been working on this. They don't need me. They don't need me. And if they're stuck or there's something that I feel like they're underperforming at, then I would take time and go, okay, I think, for example, there's a period of time where I think Backbone was getting really, really low value on Blizzard. And so I looked into it, right? And it was, honestly, the answer was really simple. It was just he needed to do a little bit more preparation between fights and thinking ahead of time and communicating a little bit better, right? But for the most part, for those 2 guys, just let them be. They were hard workers. They were smart guys. They were constantly doing their own thing. And the same thing with Landon. Sometimes with Landon, he'd be a meta he's really struggling with, and I'd work with him a lot, give him a lot of, mostly, honestly, a lot of support for what he's doing, right? You're doing fine, just hang in there, you're doing... and then once he gets to a point where he's comfortable and he feels like he's progressing, then leave him be. Let him handle and take responsibility for his own play at that point.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because like every player is different, right? Because like even from like
100%.
my experience, like I am someone who I love reviews and I love someone coming to me and like talking to me about feedback because it's actually interesting because I've actually seen this characteristic in players when I watch their streams, and I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but there are players who they will just play ranked, but they will individually push themselves to do different things time and time again.
Yep.
I am not one of those players. I will go through the motions. I will think about it and I'll go through the motions. But I need someone to tell me if I'm doing something wrong because I have like blinders on. I'm not thinking about other ways to think about it unless I take a step back, do a personal review, have someone else bring in a different perspective. And I think that's sort of what you're saying there, right? Like Backbone and Hadi, they understand how to push the limits, how to try new things, how to test things out. But not every player is like that. So players need different levels of feedback.
100%. And it's dependent on hero as well. I think Sparker is definitely a player who I worked with a pretty decent amount over the course of the season, who I'll constantly need to give him a kick in the pants. But he was also a player who, once I gave him the first couple initial reviews, like, hey, I don't know what's doing, turn your brain on, like, let your cooldown usage here, like, let's try this. Then he's a type of player that, especially as the season progressed, where he got to a point with his own intelligence, with his own, like, I guess, character, to where he just needed less and less, I guess, as the stage would go on. And then we'd start over again, and I'd give him another kick in the pants, then he was good to go for the rest of the stage. And like you said, every player is different, and it's about kind of getting, not just like telling the player what to do, but also like you really got to get to know the players. The most effective reviews I have are with the people that I know the best. And that's the dichotomy of a coach, right? Is you don't necessarily aren't always their friend, but you got to know them. You got to know them as people. You got to care for them. Otherwise, you're just not going to be an effective coach.
And they're not going to take what you have to say, like, legitimate. Like, how did you deal, like, did you ever deal with this, or how do you overcome this issue of, like, the idea that pro players, they're better than we are, right? Like, they understand the game at a way higher level. How do you give effective coaching? Like, is it more about you making them question themselves, or is it about you just throwing out ideas that provoke thought? Like, how do you like to do that level of coaching?
So, I mean, it helps a lot when you have a little bit of a reputation going in. I remember when I first started coaching, that was a huge problem, right? People didn't know who I was. Like, who are you? Just some random dude, you know? But as time goes on, like, oh yeah, Spilo, he knows what he's talking about. It's fine. But even then, I try to not assume that I have the buy-in. I try and build that camaraderie, try and build that trust. I actually remember the very first review I ever did with Admiral Raptor, back when he was still Admiral Raptor. Was before we just picked him up. I don't even know if he was announced yet. We're just trying to build a little bit of like relationships. He was playing Overwatch 1 ranked. And it was on Eichenwald, and the entire review on his Baptiste was me asking questions. I literally went into the review, I was like, hey, I just want to look at this review, and I want to just kind of, all I'm going to do is ask questions. And it's not passive aggressive, not trying to imply anything. I'm just going to ask questions. So we'd start the review, we'd go look at the team fight, and then I'd just say, hey, you're playing Baptiste. Was there a better position than where you held? Did you use your shift the best that you possibly could? And then he would say, well, yeah, I think it did. And then we'd end up discussing the shift. We discussed the positioning. And then we did that over and over and over. And it was a little bit tedious, like 40 minutes in. And then I just said, all right, that's it. We're done. And then I said, okay, you tell me, after we've been through all of these team fights, what do you need to improve on? Because we've been over like the details of every fight. Could you position better here? Could you shift better here? What's the takeaway here? And I remember the takeaway at the time was he needed to be a little bit more proactive with shooting out DPS, shooting out tanks and angles, like a little bit more like positioning himself in a way to where he was kind of more preventively protecting himself rather than reactively just standing in one spot. But I didn't tell him that, right? I would ask pointed questions because I would see things that would, but I wanted him to come to that conclusion on his own and then come to that conclusion. Because if he comes up with that idea, if he comes up with that goal, then that's going to stick so much better than anything that I could ever possibly say. And especially because, you know, I didn't have that buy-in. I didn't really know him that well. I didn't have that experience coaching him. That was how I needed to coach him for that situation. And I think, like, as time goes on, I built more camaraderie with Admiral. And he's a pretty smart guy, so usually didn't, but as the course of the season went along, there was a couple times where I said, Admiral, this sucks. I really think you should try this. And you'd be like, okay, you know. But like you gotta
build to that,
right? You gotta build to that.
You
gotta build to that. And even when you get to that point, for a lot of players, that's not where you want to be. You know, sometimes players just like being roasted a little bit, and they're cool with it. But sometimes, you know, like a player like Admiral, he's a really smart guy, and he puts a lot of thought into his play. So even then, that was a rarity with Admiral. Even when I did build that trust, usually it was more like I've been thinking about this. What do you think, right? And if nothing else, we come to a conclusion. So I think that's the key thing. Where like other players, like you know, Sparker, I could just tell him, you know, you're being an idiot. What are you doing here? Like, and he'd laugh about it. He'd think it's funny, and then you know we'd figure it out. You know, it just depends on the player.
Yeah, and that's it about like understanding what players want. It's funny because like I literally draw parallels to mine with Packing. Like when Packing first joined the LA Valiant in 2019, his first job was to be like, whoa, what the fuck is Custer doing on Lucio? So he came into me and he walked me through it, like step by step of like, you know, and one of the big things that I came out with our first reviews is that my amp timings are just wrong, like not wrong, but you don't realize how, and like anytime I talk to someone and they ask me about Lucio tips, I'd be like, just go back and look at when you press that button, because you'll realize you're pressing it a couple of seconds early, a couple of seconds late, or you didn't need to press that button at all. And like you learn from that. And it's funny as well because Packing is one of those people, and me and Packing have a relationship where it's like he just straight up says I'm doing shit wrong, and, like from time to time, and he's like, like he makes me question myself, but as well like he's not afraid, and that's who I am. Of like, I don't care if you tell me I'm doing it wrong, as long as you have legitimacy and authenticity to what you're saying, I'll listen, as long as you're not wrong and you're coming in with the wrong opinion and I can't back up why, like that's where the problem becomes. And I think there's a lot of bad coaches out there that exist in Overwatch. I think less so now, a lot of them have been filtered out, but there's a lot of, the biggest thing that I would say if you're an aspiring coach or that kind of stuff, and you've sort of laid this out perfectly, is just about, it's about helping the players come to their own conclusions in a lot of ways, because that's what's going to stick with them. You know, one of the big ones that I think really stands out in my mind that I think got overhyped in the past was like the JMac essay that he wrote for the Paris Eternal players. And I said this when it first came out, I'm like, it's not always a great way of coaching. You can tell someone, you can give them a laundry list of things that they're doing wrong, unless they really understand that the reasoning of the why and how to, and coming to a conclusion and recognizing themselves, it's so hard to work 100%. With that and fix those mistakes.
Well, you talked about it earlier. You talked about in that one, forget the coach's name, Damien, where it's like, it's just too much to process. There's just no possible way you can process that. Like the human brain learns through processes called like chunking, right? Where people see patterns, right? And they're able to kind of memorize this plus that, but that takes time. That takes a lot of time. And no commentary on J-Mech or his current coaching. I know those guys are dealing with a lot of adversity. But the essay isn't coaching. That is information. A lot of times the players might already have the information that they need. It's about what they personally need to execute, or even the way they're thinking about it. Like you said, the AMP thing, maybe it wasn't a lack of understanding on your part, it was just a lack of focus at key moments, right? And I think that's such a crucial part of coaching. And to be honest with you, that I think was like my biggest disappointment about the season, and with the situation that I was in with my family, with my house, with being married, and all the stuff I talk about Twit longer. Like, I think that was the biggest disappointment, was like, when you aren't there in person, you're just not as good. You're just at least at that aspect of coaching, which is so important. It's like I think I did pretty well, all things considered. But it's just not as good. It's just if we're honest and frank with ourselves.
No, absolutely. All right, so we're going into the final map here.
Sure.
As we continue this on, London's up 2-1. Let me get your thoughts. Like, what was London Spitfire? They're coming into this meta. You guys were a little shaky. Let's sort of go back to the game a little bit. So, how confident? Like, obviously, it's been a couple of weeks since you've been there. Like, how confident were you guys in this meta? And what is the expectations for London Spitfire for this tournament? Are they trying to get like a top 4, or are they just trying to get like a top 6? Do they just want to have fun? Are they just trying to get a free holiday? Like, that's what Goomba said for the Mayhem.
I think with all honesty, I think top 4, anything but top 4 would be disappointment for the boys. I mean, there is a world where they they don't make top 4 very easily. But I think, especially for the caliber of like expectations that we have for ourselves and the work that they put in, not top 4 placement would be disappointing. I think you could make an argument that in terms of some teams, maybe mechanically we're not always 100% top 4, but I think like we're gonna be frustrated if we're not top 4 for sure. 100%.
So the Backbone.
Yes.
Let's talk about Backbone a little bit, because he's a player that, like, I didn't really know much about anything when he was coming into the league. Obviously, he had that super comment in the after his first game, which I'm sure was like hard for him. Like, that's a hard narrative to shake when like you've done that. Like, his Mei, honestly, I think is one of the best in the world from just like watching it consistently. And his Genji has made leaps and bounds of improvement. Like, talk me through Backbone. How has he done such a good job of improving, especially on that Genji?
Sure. I mean, I've talked about this. Like, Backbone historically, back in Contenders, was considered a very, very, very flexible player. Like, he was good in a lot of heroes. And then just went through a tough time, wasn't able to play in scrims for a long period of time, and then obviously getting picked up, and then we play a lot of Mei. He's not able to show his, flex his muscles a lot in a lot of different aspects. So then you get put in a situation where like you just haven't played the hero in literally ages, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously like you have the meme, and then everybody's talking about the meme, and like that's tough on your confidence. Like you said, like that's one thing that is such a curse when it comes to being a professional esports player. Is you are very accessible to these memes. You know these things. You know who said it. You know who's memeing about you here and there. And I think for Backbone, clearly mechanically he wasn't at the peak, but I think people slept on him, and I've even talked about this, especially when he put a couple of extra weeks of work into it. I mean, there were scrims where, I think again, Yiska's interview with Sparker talked about this today, where Backbone was playing at Proper's level, mechanically, right? But it's the flow state that he has to get into. It's that confidence that he has to have in himself, and especially when people are doubting you or the team is struggling, you don't get there. You don't get there. And I think one of the things that this brings up a really great talking point about not just Backbone, because I think this is what makes players like Kevster and Proper so great. Is not just that they have these crazy high mechanical peaks, because I think their peaks are high, but I think that you look at so many Genjis in the league when they're playing in a flow state, the gap is very, very, very small.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
But what makes them great is that they're just so consistently good, Maybe they're not, Proper's not like literally like hitting every shuriken, but he's like, how many bad games has Proper had this season? How many bad games has Kevster, even this stage, how many bad games has Kevster had this season?
It was like a top 4 Genji, like statistically, even though his team went like tragically bad.
And I think you were talking about Kai on stream earlier. I was chiming in when I was turning my stream on, and it's the same thing. It's like that to me is the real caliber of a true player, and I think like that's what Backbone's path has been like, can I not just play Genji at a peak level in scrims? Oh, I'm diffing Proper, oh man. But can I do that in an official? And then can I do that again? And then can I do that again? And then can I do that again? And that's like his own personal path, right? and something that he has to improve on as an individual, because, you know, he's had some really ugly valleys this season, you know?
Yeah.
And he would admit it as well. He's played like trash at points, not just on Genji. There was a map, I don't doubt you guys, people even remember it, but King's Row versus Gladiators, the game we lost 3-1. We should have won that game. That map 2 or 3, I think, was on King's Row. We lost very narrowly. I don't think he hit a shuriken in like 45, or shuriken, I say, an ice goal in like 45 seconds in May. He just whiffed every single one. The pressure was high, and he choked, and he looked real bad. But I think what he's done is, and hope will continue to do, is he's been building the confidence, right? He's been, like we talked about it earlier, developing that character, developing that player, just developing himself as a person. And that will help him hit more shurikens as Genji. As crazy as that sounds, that's just how life works. And that's like been his goal this season.
Do you think that's like one of the most underrated aspects of a player is just confidence? I know a lot
100%.
of average players who just outperform themselves due to just unreasonable confidence in themselves, and that's the thing, as you said about Proper. Like, you just watch Proper play the game, and like the way he moves around, like, he plays as if he's never gonna miss, and then he never does miss because he just plays in that
100%.
state. Like, I think everyone who's ever played Overwatch can say, like, you know, that when tensions get high, you hit that overtime, all of a sudden the adrenaline starts flowing. It's so easy to get in your head. You miss a couple of shots, all of a sudden you start losing that confidence. Like,
Right.
Is that something that you've seen, like, that London Spitfire has had any issues with this season, of just like you had one or multiple players lose confidence in themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that every team struggles with in any sport. I mean, I think everybody, even if you don't compete in Overwatch, if you've played a game, or you've played a video game, or you played even just a sport, flow state is very real, and it allows you to play better mechanically. Like, when you start thinking too much, you start playing worse. And I know that sounds different, but when the game, especially of Overwatch, is just too fast and too complicated for you to be thinking. You just have to flow, you just have to feel. And so when you lose that confidence and you start thinking to compensate, you start slowing down. And like you said, it is really an underrated skill. It is really an underrated skill. I think you look at a lot of these, I think the NA Hive Mind, the joke about like the Atlanta Reign in seasons past, like that team performed really well when it was confident. Even though, because for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just NA ego, those guys just occasionally hit these flow states where they just believe that they were the best, you know? And all of a sudden they start overperforming, and like they're in grand finals against Shanghai Dragons. Like, obviously there's a lot of factors that goes into that, right? But like, I think that was a crucial one. And again, like, look at a team like the Glads. Like, Glads just, they get on LAN and they're just like, the ego comes out and they just don't care. And you're gonna play well. You're gonna play well with that. Now, there are downsides. Too much ego can cause a lot of other issues, internal and external. But I think there is lack of confidence is 100% something that hurts and hinders players.
Yeah, and it's actually, you know, I reference this a lot of times, but it's funny because in 2018, I remember when I was on the Dallas Fuel, Johnny wrote this article. Reinforced, like, it was about the Dallas Fuel, and he was saying it was like this mentality of playing to win instead of playing to not lose. And I think a lot of teams and players get into this mentality a lot of the time, where it's like they're so worried about losing that they're not thinking about how they win
100%.
the game, and they start playing in a way that, yes, maybe they're not feeding in the lobby, but they're all of a sudden leaving their teammates out to dry, and then all of a sudden teammates lose confidence in each other, and that's how you generally see these implosions of these teams. And that all goes back to that confidence aspect that we were saying.
Right. And it's hard to get back to, you know. It is an ethereal thing to hold on to. I mean, I think when we beat the Reign ending stage 1, right, on that Colosseo Reign matchup, that was the one thing Chris said. He's like, guys, do not play to not lose, play to win, right? Don't be scared to make mistakes. Let's finish this out with some balls. And I think that we did.
And that's the important thing. All right, so as we're coming into the closing stages, I got a couple more questions. These are more just like short form, you know, punchline questions that always come through. Right now, who's your MVP of the league?
Kevster, I think. I know that's a bit of a hot take when Proper exists. I think Kevster has just been consistently the most, like, really just the most consistent player throughout the season. He just doesn't have a bad game. I think Glads don't win either stage without Kevster.
Yeah, I think Kevster's a good shout. I'm personally a Proper fan, as much as they haven't got over the edge. Like, I think Proper is the best player in every server he's ever been, even when Kevster was in it. Like,
fair enough.
You know, you look at that mid-season.
Can't argue that.
I respect it. Okay. follow up. I want you to sell me and my chat on the London Spitfire. Why should we be fans of your team? What is the peaks that you guys can get to? Not just this stage, but next stage. How are you guys going to make a playoff run?
I think like just if nothing else, like we know that we're going to be giving effort, and you know that we're going to be authentic. Like we're not always going to follow the meta. We're not always going to do what's good because of the sake of being good. We're not the traditionally strong team with a massive roster. Like the underdog, I guess, team. I mean, that's what we are. Like the meme exists, you know, the inspirational quote from the coaching and the hardworking, grinding players that nobody doubted. I mean, that's like, we really are like, that is exactly what the London Spitfire are. I mean, we've had our moments, but like it's a lot of our wins this season have been very fairy tale in their execution and finish. And I think like if you want to root for an underdog, a team that like really has good attitudes, has put the work in, and honestly has a lot of character as well. I think if you look at these players, like has like Hadi, like, you know, backbone, like Landon, and really everybody, Poco as well. Got a lot of character, you know. We got guys with personalities, we got guys with confidence, and they're good guys too, right? We're not just, you know, arrogant buttholes, but these guys are genuinely good guys, you're good teammates, they care a lot, they're good people, and I think like that's something to root for. And I know there's a lot of drama going on in the league, but I think for the players and the staff, they're good guys. Nuki, Commander X, Chris, they're good guys, good team, underdogs, and yeah, you should be a fan if you aren't already.
Hell yeah. Okay, last question. Next meta, what do you think it's going to be? Let's just go off the idea that Junker Queen gets thrown off a cliff, right? Like, what do you think the next meta is? Because we still got the Doomfist nerfs, we got the Orisa buffs, we got a bunch of things that came through.
Man, it's tough. I mean, it really is going to depend on like what mobile heroes are strong, because I imagine we're not just going to see Junker Queen nerfs. I imagine there's going to be a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and I think what they're tweaking is going to be crucial. We're going to go back to some form of mobility, I think. I think you'll probably see, maybe, are we going to see Tracer again? Are we going to see Zenyatta again? Because I think one of Zenyatta's big strengths wasn't just the HP, but the fact that I can orb my flankers, right? We can play for map control, we can play for angles.
And the kick is such a nice thing in really these dive heroes,
huge,
right? Like,
survivability, yeah, absolutely. So I think like we could see Doom come back if they revert that slow nerf on his slam, but a lot more mobility, I think, in terms of, and by mobility I don't just mean speed, I mean ability to just kind of be in a million different places at once. Maybe Genji, maybe Tracer. It's really too early to say, but I think moving away from the stacked up, group up, run people over with, you know, dribble on your mouth, if they nerf Junker Queen, that's going to be gone.
And London Spitfire will still play Reinhardt no matter where it ends up, I'm sure.
100%.
Spillo, that's it for this one. Thank you very much so much for joining me and giving the insight. Like, honestly, your answers were awesome, super insightful. I know chat's been saying how awesome this has been as well, so I really appreciate you coming on. Let people know where they can find you. I know you've been making a lot of content. You do a lot of coaching stuff. How do they find out your content?
Sure, I appreciate you having me on. First of all, you can find me on twitch.tv/Spilo, S-P-I-L-O. You can find me the same, I believe, Twitter, coach_Spilo. You can join my Discord from either of those links. But yeah, I've been doing some private coaching and trying to get a little bit of the Overwatch content wave going into Overwatch 2. Hope it goes well. But yeah, thank you again so much for having me on, mate. I always enjoy your stuff on the desk and all that stuff. I think you're the greatest. And yeah, have a good rest of your day, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for watching this YouTube video, and I will see you guys next time.
All right. That was that. I hope I left at the right time. I hope I left at the right time. Did I leave at the right time? I didn't know he was saying goodbye to the YouTube. So yeah, it was more of an interview rather than a review, but I think that was the style that Custa definitely wanted, and it works for me. I think like the thing is like there's so much to talk about when it comes to like the London Spitfire, the meta, the Overwatch League, that there's so much low-hanging fruit before you even talk about the actual game itself. That it makes sense. I'm honestly trying to think if there was any like big takeaways from the actual match that I saw. Sparker looked like he was clicking heads. Honestly, chat, I have no freaking idea. I don't have no idea what I just watched. I like literally, this is what we talked about with like multitasking and giving too much information as a coach. I have no idea what I just watched. I'm an Overwatch League coach, or was, and I don't know what I just watched while I was talking. So you guys tell me, what did the London Spitfire need to work on? Oh boy. Yeah, okay, so first off, I guess I should probably catch up in the activity feed. There's been a lot of subs. I really, really want to thank you all for all that. Sketch, obviously. Psycho, if you're still here, mate, thank you for the host. I think somebody in chat said that you hosted, but I don't even think Psycho's here. Rip. Psycho viewers, thank you guys for hopping in. Psycho's a beast, so he deserves to be in the league. Tectris, thank you for the sub. Quote, when XQC goes again. Thanks for the sub. Pax Play, thank you for the sub as well. And a trillion followers. Frozen Owl, very clever name. Took me a second. Thank you so much for the 1,020 or 2,000 bits. Holy crap, mate. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I feel bad that I didn't catch your message. So if you are still here, if you had a question or a message, please repeat it so that I can catch it. Also, yeah. I'm trying to catch up on all this crap here. And I say the word crap isn't as nicely as I possibly can. Okay. Discord League, yeah. Nobody was talking. I'm pretty sure it's just because I paid for all the bots. That's why. Yeah, Custa is great. If you guys, I mean, obviously I doubt he needs the plug, but I'll throw the plug in here just in case. If you guys don't know, Custa is a previous Overwatch League player. Now turned on the desk caster. He's not exactly a caster. He could cast, but he's just part of the desk talent in Overwatch League. Great guy, really, really genuine. I think the thing that makes Custa is so nice is he's just genuine. You know, he's just, what you see is what you get, and he's also pretty smart when it comes to the game as well. Very personable. So give him a check out. The fact that he's Australian as well is a nice little bust. So, bust, I say. But I do have to say this. I will say this, or I will show this. I have saved this from, I don't even know, 2018, 2019. I ran into Custa in a tryhard FFA lobby, and being like the Platinum Zenyatta that I was at the time. If we really have to know who's the best here. Platinum aim. I mean, a little bit of bag there at the end. I'm the greatest, what can I say? So, you know, Custa's great just as long as he knows his place. The best part about that clip is the guy in the league was the auto hotkey as a Genji player. S tier name, man. S tier name. My Smurf back when not Smurf, my alt account that I used to play OTP Genji with was named AHK as well. It's pretty funny. Yeah. The stuff about confidence and development as a player helping was really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that I'm trying to kind of lean into with our future VOD reviews going into Overwatch 2 as well. I've been super into like the sprint mindset, feed the cats. I can't. You guys are like, what is he saying? You're gonna have to look into it or wait for our coaching sessions because I've got a lot of ideas. You guys, I'm gonna be coaching well, but I'm in full transparency here. I'm gonna be doing a little bit of experimentation. I think I have some ideas that might actually improve my Overwatch coaching. I'm not doing it because you guys are test lab rabbits or rats rather. You guys aren't pretty enough to be rabbits, but it's gonna be some ideas I think that will make training better. That's the. What team does Spilo coach? Oh, too soon. All right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even close. I was actually doing that with one hand. I was playing with my elbow. As soon as I saw him on Lucy, I was like, oh, Freelo. The guy said his amp usage was bad. That's not, that was bad. I'm pretty sure that I don't even think he could aim whatsoever. That is a plat clip and a half. Oh yeah. You run into any even remotely famous person, you're like, oh, I killed him. Look at that, guys. I remember who was the guy? Was it Valkia? Who was the Farah streamer? Not Fariha, but the Farah guy streamer. Hair check? I don't even know if I have a brush, mate. I'm actually take the earbuds out. Valkia. I killed Valkia once in Zenyatta, and I was like gold on like a tryhard lobby, and I was like, oh, I killed the Farah player, guys! And it was on stream too. I was like, yes, I am famous! Ugh. Everybody does that. It doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter who you are. Coaches the stream team? No, listen. The whole point of coaching is that you have confidence that there's going to be improvement in what you're doing. You're going to get return on your investment. Success builds motivation. I have no success with any of you morons, so why on earth would I want to coach you guys? That was a joke. Shadowburn. Oh yeah, I remember Dude, I'm still friends with Shadowburn and Blizzard. I saw him log into Overwatch, I want to say like several months ago. But yeah, good old Shadowburn. Yazin, no, this was ages ago. Did that to me like 2 years ago? Yeah, that's a cap. Yeah. I'll believe it when I see it, and probably still won't believe it then. You killed pros and for clout to challenge myself and for the opportunity to grow. We are not the same. Yeah, okay, dude. Nice positive mindset. We all have that friend who's like overly positive and productive with their mindset, and you're just like, all right, you're worthless to me. He didn't. Oh yeah, is that Cluj? Oh, thank you for the gifted sub, mate. Yeah, I appreciate the bits. I still don't know what your initial message was. I feel like an idiot. Not the first time today, but they're really toxic. Yeah, it's okay. It happens. Who would have thought that professional players are often toxic? Yow. A video game player acting in a degenerate manner? Crazy. I've had to fight getting sucked into the degeneracy. It's been hard. Do you think if you study the Quran, you automatically become better at Farah? My favorite part about Yazin was I'm good friends with Fuki. I don't know if you guys know Fuki from Contenders. And they went to the Saudi Arabian land, I want to say like a year and a half ago. And Fuki just calls me in Discord, and I'm working. I'm like, hey man, what's up? He's just like FaceTiming me. He's like, oh yeah, because there it was, and he's like with all the other Saudi players. He's like, oh look, there's Yazin, and Yazin's just on the bed, just like sound asleep. And I'm like, Fuki, is he cool? You just sitting like he's just like sound asleep. Oh dude, it was a mess. Their hotel room was like super nice, and like 7 or 8 teenage guys. It was a mess. There was like pizza on the floor. It was not nice. Psycho was doing a Contenders companion stream. Oh, sick. Yeah, how did Contenders go? I haven't followed Contenders super much recently. I love it when I get Garage, also known as Hottie in the Rank Games. Oh, is that his alt account? I don't know all his alt accounts. He had one like anime sounding goofy thing in Overwatch 2 ranked. I don't think actually it wasn't an anime name. I think he just made it up. Imagine making up your own name. Cringe. It was an Overwatch educational streamer. Oh, rip. Can't wait till you guys get into a quick play game with me and I scream you. I'm actually pretty nice when it comes to quick play. The only thing that ticks me off is actually I'm not very good at responding to negativity to somebody else. I tend to get overly defensive. So I'll be like doing quick play with my brother, or I'll be doing quick play with my wife, or I'll just doing quick play with nobody. Like and somebody will like trash my a teammate and they don't really deserve it. I'm like, yeah, shut up, idiot, fool. That's exactly literally what I do call them, an idiot fool. Usually the comboing of the words just enhances the wholes greater than the sum of the parts. Idiot, fool, moron, nut. You can even pair them together because moron, nut. I don't really know where I'm going with this. Hottie-chan. Please don't say Hottie-chan. What's the plan for stream now? Do we end? I don't know. Probably, yeah. I mean, I could, you know what? Tell you what, chat. You know what? Because Cager has been so sweet for so long, I owe Cager one thing, guys. We're gonna do one hammer time. Yeah, Dirtwood is great. That was good. Anima, I remember that one still. We're gonna do one hammer time. So if you guys don't know what hammer time is, it's basically where educational content is submitted to me that I can tell you whether it was garbage or not. Now, Cager he's an Overwatch YouTuber, and he sent in a video how to play Overwatch explained in 5 levels. I think personally the title should have been explained on 5 levels, but I can see it both ways. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch the video, and I'm either gonna guffaw with mocking laughter, or I'm gonna go, that was pretty good, and then guffaw and mocking laughter because it's Cager and I still don't care. So we'll do one hammer time, and then I'm gonna call a stream. Also, subtle plug, ! Coaching. I should just put like ! Cash, and there's just a link directly to my PayPal, and you're not allowed to send anything under like quadruple digits.
No intro.
Actually, quintuple digits. Actually, just put put in your credit card information. That would be great. I would be a successful content creator. The child gets his Christmas gift, and it's not even Christmas. Ha! It's funny because he's a child. Yeah. I'm not making fun of that insult. I'm fully supportive of the child insult. I think he deserves to be put in his place. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at this. Let's get my epic pin out so I can. I don't even know if I can get the hotkey right for the because like all right, we gotta test it, y'all. We gotta test it. Is this gonna work? Wait, what is the hotkey for? What is it for? I don't remember. I don't remember the hotkey for beef. Is it this? Ah! I can just do this, I guess. I can just click it. I know that's cheating, guys, but I don't remember the hotkeys anymore. Why is this not working? Why is this not working? There it is.
Not bad.
That gut freaks me, man. Alright, and then does this work?
Fatality. Fatality.
See? Alright. Let's find out if this is beefed, tolerable, or scoffed. Let's find out.
Get on with it. No
What is
intro.
this? Who is Dark Splash?
Let's get on with it. Overwatch is a 6v6 or no Overwatch
Oh, great! Oh, we're off to oh, it's a noob level, never mind.
2, a 5v5 first-person shooter between two teams whose success depends upon two main factors, their timing and positioning. Even Video Game Donkey simplifies the game down to this level.
Nearly every Overwatch match is decided by positioning and timing. Can your team sync up good enough to push? Can you get your flankers and your front line moving in at the same time? If not, you lose.
Timing refers to when you decide to exert pressure on the enemy team, which should be at the same time as either team pressures, and positioning refers to where you decide to exert
Is this video just saying this, but for every single level? At the pro level, timing and positioning.
pressure on the enemy team,
'Cause it's
which
kinda
boils
true.
down to utilizing angles. I recently made a whole video breaking down timing across all the roles in Overwatch, but it's really no more complicated than timing when you do stuff with when your team does stuff. Your team essentially acts as a
I got stuff to do, man.
distraction to allow you to get away with aggressive plays, hence why timing aggression is very fundamental. Positioning can be a very complicated concept, especially for new players. Where do I go? Does my positioning change with each hero? And if so, why? What about the map that I play, or the composition that my team plays? There can be a lot of nuances with positioning, hence why a general rule of taking angles is often a good idea. The reason why angles are strong is twofold. The first is that it eliminates cover. By taking multiple angles around a team, there is no cover to utilize, because if you hide from one angle, there's going to be another one that you can rely on.
Nobody from Shock can stabilize here because of Reaper, and nobody from Shock can stabilize here because of Sombra. So you're
The
absolutely
cat's
right.
scratching. They also have angles, so now they're pressuring here, forcing this diva to make an option of like, do I want to DM the Sombra?
It's me
Do I
with
wanna DM
enemy.
Reaper? Do I want to DM these guys?
The other thing that you can touch on as well, the reason why map control is good is not just because of like the vision manipulation
Because-
you're describing, but it's also because cover just doesn't exist. Like Winston can't stop taking damage here. He can't stop taking damage here. He can't stop taking damage here. There is nowhere to hide because of the angles that allow people to shoot continuously.
Throwing my voice.
There never is any corner.
The second reason is that it splits attention and focus. It's way easier to focus on one direction of damage compared to multiple. Anyways, on to the next level.
So I think I agree. My only thing is I think that maybe more important than positioning. I think timing is definitely important. It's just the guys group up as 6. Like that whole mindset, like that has to be the goal. But I think actually figuring out what your cooldowns actually do might be more important than positioning. Like I'm not sure how low of a level noob is, but I feel like noob is like relatively new to the game. And I feel like going in at the same time as your team and then also finding out like what does my cooldown do? Like what does what does Heal Orb do? What does Discord do? I think that has to be, that's probably even more important than positioning. That's one nitpick.
Now onto the second level, there'll be 4 additional concepts, being sightlines, mechanics, timing, and movements. Let's deal with the first.
We've doubled.
Sightlines refer to what range you want to be playing at, for timing and movements. Let's deal with the first. Sightlines refer to what range you want to be playing at. For instance, on maps like Junkertown, Havana, or Rialto to a lesser extent, heroes like Hanzo, Widow, or Ashe would be preferable, whereas on maps like Lijiang Control Center, due to the short sightlines, heroes like Mei, Doom, Reaper, Reinhardt, Symmetra, and Junkrat would be best. Mechanics is also something.
See, I wouldn't put this at novice. I would put this as like, okay, and average. Like you're now like a gold plat player and you have a hero pool and you're trying to figure out what hero to play in which situation. And not just which hero to play in which situation, but like let's say that you're playing Widowmaker, you're generally going to want to, as a gold player, plat player, start thinking about, I'm going to try and position on longer sightlines as Widowmaker. I know that sounds like forehead, but actually a lot of average players don't do a very good job of that, right? They don't think about setting up their hero for success based off of the sightline length. I don't think this is a novice thing. I think novice would be like positioning. Let's not stand out in the open. Let's find good corners. Like, let's learn how to, not die instantly to Bastion, and then when you get out of that, then we can start talking about like the sightline average.
I'd like to touch on. Whilst this definitely could be on a higher level, mechanics and settings are something you set quite early on, and warm-up routines, whether that be an Overwatch workshop code, practicing in deathmatch, or using aim trainers like Kovacs, are good habits to get onto from the onset. I recommend checking out some of IOStox's videos on aim training, and feel free to pause the
mechanics
video
is
here
reasonable.
to test
Like,
out
at
my
least
personal
finding a good
settings on
sensitivity
console.
is something that
They
you'd
will
want to do
also be in
pretty
the
early.
description. Next, let's build off timing a bit more. Even for a casual player, timing cooldowns, ultimates, and abilities are key to maximizing your value. As I go into depth on in my timing video, this is especially key for off-tank and flex support players. A well-timed defense matrix, Zarya bubble, biotic grenade, or immortality field could swing the team fight in a matter of seconds. Lastly, let's move on to movement. IOStox made an over an hour-long video dedicated to movement, which I'll try to summarize in under 30 seconds. Movement mainly compromises of strafing, jumping, crouching, standing still, peek shooting.
It's about strafing in and out of cover to make sure that you are only exposing yourself when you absolutely have to.
And any other counter-specific movements. The whole point of learning these techniques is to make your movement more elusive, meaning you're harder to hit, whilst also ensuring your aim doesn't suffer too much. Players in the metal ranks, especially in gold and below, have predictable movement that if improved upon, might lower their deaths per 10.
Okay, sure.
Now onto the average tier, or what I'd consider competitive players who genuinely do want to improve. Here I have 5 additional concepts of healing, the 4 positional rules, the fundamentals of each hero, and sustain, range, and mobility.
We're getting more
Let's start off with the
complicated!
smallest concept of the bunch, healing. Healing is most simply helping out another teammates. You'll most commonly see this with heroes like D.Va, Lucio, and Brig, who can use their crowd control abilities to stun or boop enemy threats away. Here's Coach Spike detailing how to efficiently peel here.
It's very hard for the heroes who should peel for you to be an active member in the fight, while also being able to peel for you if you are far away. This creates a very awkward moment for heroes like D.Va or Brig, for example. They want to go in as well and fight and follow up on engages and brawl, but if they push up, they leave you alone, which makes you incredibly vulnerable to flankers.
I'm gonna try and
If they
move
don't
my
push up,
desk
they can help you with threats,
at the same time
but
as we're
they're
watching here.
completely useless for the fight itself. If you play closer, they can deal damage, but still have the opportunity to quickly turn around.
I don't think this clip has much to do about peeling, but about positioning in a way that to where you're less. I mean, I guess it kind of has to do with peeling, like being the recipient, a good recipient of peel. I guess I don't know.
And help.
Now to the 4 positional rules stolen from Nata, which is cover, lines of sight, distance from angles, and rotational options. Here's an example I use all the time on Havana's second point attack to help illustrate the 4 rules. You clearly have cover or a corner to play around, you have line of sight onto the enemy team to deal damage or land abilities, you have enough distance from angles to react to flankers, and you have some rotational options, either to retreat back to safety or to push up and be more aggressive. The next concept I want to cover is learning hero fundamentals. This is essentially the base reasoning to why you play your hero. For example, with Tracer, you play her for map control. You're one of the best duelists in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think like at least at average, you'd start to not just master your abilities, but actually start to find a play style. Of like, okay, what does Genji do that Tracer doesn't do? And how can I leverage that? You know? I can see that being an average level skill. But I still would have liked you to have said, like, you need to learn how to use your freaking cooldowns at bronze. If you don't know what your cooldowns do, get out of dodge.
So if there's a DPS flanking, you can mark that DPS, and even if you don't kill them, you'll force them back main, lowering the value that they get. Luckily for all you DPS players, I cover each fundamental in my 90,000 word hero guide, which I'll link down below. For tanks and supports, I'll breeze through it now. With Ana, nade aggressively, sleep defensively, unless there aren't any flankers. With Baptiste, interweave your healing and damage as much as possible and ensure good lamp timing. With Brigitte, either threaten short sidelined angles like this one on Dorado, where you can deny enemy DPS flanking, or stay relatively close to your other support to fend off
thanks
threats.
for the sub.
Make sure you are able to brawl though.
You're my mom because I keep getting money. Thanks for the subs.
Referring back to Coach Spike's clip. With Lucio, spin your team in or out of fights, using your Warride, boop, and gun to dual DPS or threaten off-angle pressure,
Yeah,
like
this
on
is fair.
King's third point attack. Optimize your damage boost by damage boosting those
Yeah,
who
I mean, basically, like, I can skip this. This is just basically like, what does your hero do that other heroes do not do? It's that simple.
are aggressing. For instance, a Reinhardt Fire Strike, a Rodok Hook, as Coalescence as fast as possible.
But we don't have to list off. Are you literally just going to list off every hero? Please.
Timing your heal with Decacia when necessary. With Winston,
I mean, fair enough, but I feel like this should be a video in of itself. You know what I'm saying?
Zap and I pull a Teresa due to her rework, but she'll get to see. This is what I recommend checking out Coach Other.
Wait, what? You didn't do the DPS?
Team will
Bruh!
be running.
You did like half the cast. Oh. Appreciate it, Frozen. I get another one. Thank you for the sub, mate. Congratulations, Balaxy1. You have the world's worst Twitch username and a subscription.
And
Actually, I just had to say something rude.
I have mentioned this.
But why? Why 13 heroes? Why not do the full cast or none of the cast, or give one as an example and then make an entire video on the fundamentals of each hero? That would have been, there's your video idea. You're welcome. Do this, but expand it so 30 seconds for each hero, or 40, and then do a whole video on that. Or just do the supports. And then the fundamentals of support, fundamental DPS, fundamental tank. I'm literally feeding your future children with these ideas.
In previous
Your video is too long as it is because you did 13 freaking heroes instead of one! You're halfway! You could have cut off like 3 minutes!
videos, but I highly recommend checking out Coach Spike's Frontline vs Angles video, which breaks down this quite well and explains how to play certain comps against each other. I'll play a short clip of it here.
So
No
people
wonder it's so long! 20 minutes of other people's clips! The Cager in a nutshell! Get all your content, it's mine!
Low range give you a
It's
strong
like the Jeff Bezos of content creators.
front line. Mobile people mostly play for angles, and ranged people are in between. Both teams can play
Scum-sucking
aggressively and defensively,
parasite.
either denying or taking angles, either running it down or
I
disrupting.
believe Bezos probably has a girlfriend. Okay, so I think this is all, like, if we go back to the actual, like, things here, peeling just is kind of an odd thing to put in average, but I think maybe, like, team awareness would have been good to put in average, so, like, maybe a little bit more general. So, like, if you're a tank, just knowing where the frick your teammates are playing is really, really helpful. So you're not feeding, you're like, oh, they're back there. And you're playing an on, you're like, I'm going to play this position, but your team's all the way over there. That's probably not that good. And then you could say that's positioning, but it's not really. It's just generally being aware of what's going on. Wasn't it Jane that said, like, you could win so many games by just finding a person on your team and being like, I'm going to help you do whatever you want to do. That's actually such a really crucial point of Overwatch, is being a good team player without having to use voice, without having to type in chat, you guys need to group up around me, just using your eyeballs and helping people. I think that's probably an average skill set that probably matches the peeling thing a little bit better. The positional rules is fine, like being a little bit more nitpicky about the micro positioning. Hero fundamentals is also fine, but this needed to be its own freaking video. You could have done one example, then its own freaking video. I still don't know what SRM means. What does SRM mean?
Composition your team will be running, and I have mentioned this in previous videos, but I highly recommend watch 2 drops. Let's move on to the final concept of sustain versus range versus mobility. This is what dictates the kind of composition your team will be running, and I have mentioned this in previous videos.
Oh, as in you decide what type of composition that you're playing, so you adjust your playstyle accordingly. I don't know if I put that in average. I think most gold plot players probably struggle too much. Like, I even stop talking about composition as much in lower ranks, because I think it might be a little bit too nitpicky. What am I missing? If Bezos could pay for a girl, could pay. If not, Bezos could pay for a girlfriend. Yeah. Doesn't know about SRM. Yeah. Well, I'm still a better coach than you are, Ruby. I have no water. Falco Tank. Thank you for the sub. I appreciate it, mate.
But I highly recommend checking out Coach Spike's
you stole him from
Frontline
Jeff
vs
Nippard?
Angles with it here.
I'm sorry, Jeff Nippard is. Imagine your name was Nippard. He's a good content creator, but Nippard. Hello, my name is Mr. Nippard. I'm sorry, guys. But it's okay if I bully famous people, right? Right, guys? It's different if it's a famous person. Right?
Now onto the penultimate.
Really, please don't use music like this ever again. I'm begging you. Please don't. This is the kind of music that you listen with your 4-year-old, daughter, and they're dancing in the living room, throwing.
I said it with my chest, and I don't care who I offend.
Now,
No. What is next? I survive or I will survive. What's next? FRMSIEE. Thank you for the sub. Little Sims. I don't even know what Little Sims is. The good news is that it's consistent with the artist name quality and the actual sound quality of the music that they produce. Sounds like trash. Is this video idea inspired from those videos where professors explain a concept in 5 different levels to like a little kid to him? I don't know. That's a good question for Cager. Not having the boomer judge UK hip hop doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Oh, good little boy, good little boy. Hit him with the dot. Hit him with the dot. You don't have a hip hop scene. There's West Coast, there's East Coast, and then there's Snaggletooth Coast. You don't have a scene. Your scene is irrelevant. Like, I'm pretty sure that, like, Japanese probably has a better death metal presence than you guys have a rap scene. It's not there. Sorry, bud. Good try, bud. Nice try.
on to the penultimate level,
Got less scene than a Hot Topic store.
Here we have yet another 4 additional concepts.
But you guys aren't ready for that.
Kill boxes,
or you're too old for that.
and the half-second rule.
Okay, tempo, kill boxes, mentality. Okay, so this is elite. Oh, boys, okay. I can just smell my videos from a mile away. Tempo, kill boxes, mentality, 0.5 second rule. Okay, let's see.
Dealing with the first concept, tempo is often misunderstood. Tempo is just the rate at which you use resources.
UK doesn't have hip hop, bro. You don't have hip hop. You're eating the fish and chips, yo. What? The sky is great again. Go to see the big old Ben. The queen is old.
You sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh yeah, I do sound like Red Hot Chili. I mean, that's what they sound like. It's all sound the same. Blah.
Therefore, a fast tempo is when you use resources in a short period of time, and vice
Your
versa.
entire culture is great. Your food, your sky, your architecture.
This gaming with Boosh explaining fast tempo is when you use resources in a short period of time, and vice versa. This gaming with Boosh explaining tempo.
Alright, I gotta focus. Sorry, guys.
Resources in a short period of time.
Rate at which you use resources. Oh boy, I love adding definition. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna
and
say.
vice versa. His gaming with Boosh explaining tempo across 3 main compositions.
Healthcare check. Oh wow, that's predictable. That's predictable. You know what Americans do? Americans be like, you know what? Our healthcare sucks, but look at this body. Do you think I need healthcare? I'm made of steel, boy. Steel. We build strength. We build quality bodies. Our healthcare sucks because we don't need it. Does the Terminator need malaria medication? Heck no!
Heroes are very cyclical in
nature.
Resources. Therefore, a fast tempo is when you use resources in a short period of time, and vice versa. His gaming with Boosh explaining tempo across 3 main compositions.
Dive heroes are very cyclical in nature. They quickly engage with their resources, get value, and disengage. In a dive team composition, Winston will engage at the same time as his other teammates in order to maximize their power and effectiveness. Dive comps play at a very slow tempo before a dive, and a very fast tempo during the dive, and again, a very slow tempo after.
I mean, I guess I can say that. I would just say that, like, dive comps are more cooldown reliant. Spam comps are less cooldown reliant. So I guess I agree. Look at the mirror to heal faster. Yeah, exactly. Like, whoa. I feel inspired. Oh, look at that.
For a dive. Poke spam heroes are not cyclical at all in nature. Poke comps play at a constant tempo over the course of a fight. The longer that a fight goes on, the more of an advantage Poke will have over the other team comps. Brawl heroes are somewhere in between. Their kits are between weapon and ability based. They are somewhat cyclical, with medium abilities and weapons and long cooldowns. Brawl comps power over time would look something like this.
Yeah,
which shows that Brawl
Cager
comps
does a good job, like,
tempo,
bringing in other little-known
I
content
highly
creators.
recommend you check out Boosh's video. Not only is the advice sound, but but the editing is great. To clarify tempo a bit further, this Barlow giving an example of a
Cage's
dive
definition of
composition
great
in
editing
Overwatch
is
2
obviously
playing slow.
It's too simplistic to say that this composition just needs to go in right now. What they could do, we're going to take an angle here with our Tracer, and then where our Winston's going to play underneath, and then our Reaper's going to play up in here, so our Ana's going to be looking for an angle here, and our Lucifer's going to be looking for Boop. So they could play it slow, but just as long as they're not getting shot too much. So they can play it slow, avoiding damage,
Please include my graph.
scowling,
Please do it.
for maybe they force a cooldown on this, or maybe Punk just messes up and bubbles this, or maybe Crimzo gets shot a couple times by Krillin and then has to nade himself. That's the kind of thing that you're looking for, but you don't have to be engaged all the way to go. You don't have to dive. We have to dive now.
Please stop talking,
When you
Spyro.
do commit,
Please
you
go
commit
to the
hard,
graph.
but you're waiting for and looking for opportunities for you to commit hard on.
To build off what Sparlow says, why would you even want to play a slower tempo in the first place? Well, there's a few reasons. First off, it can burn more time off the clock if you're defending. Secondly, you can allow the enemy team to walk into your own kill box. In the example Sparlow gives of the dive comp playing slow, a kill box would likely be somewhere on the high ground where you play slow.
Oh, the transition! My man was like, "I'm gonna transition those concepts smoothly." It was good. It was good. And even the little highlighter here, all we needed was like the magical 1990s turn the book to read the next page, like the magical little thingy.
So the Zarya comp can actually walk into the kill box. This provides a nice transition into kill boxes themselves.
Oh, if I do say so myself, provides a really nice transition. Thank you, Cager. Hope your back isn't too sore.
Kill boxes are just areas of the map that you make lethal once the enemy team walk through them. Sparlow's already got a great video. Areas
Yeah, I mean, this is fair. Fine.
of the map that you make lethal once
Mask
the enemy
effect is
team
fine.
walk through them. Sparlow's already got a great video detailing kill boxes in a variety of comps, so here's an example on Busan. And also note how the Sombra positions, again referring
He doesn't want to leech too much. Can you guys see this? Hey, where's a hat? Where's a hat? I need a hat right now. Speed. Speed. I'm gonna wait this one out. We have to make our point here. I don't want to leech too much. LOL, he says. He typed out the LOL. Right? That's the rule. Whenever you type out LOL, you're not actually LOL. Like, nobody ever actually LOLs. I don't think anybody's actually LOL'd while typing out LOL in probably 13, 14 years.
Okay.
Last documented case.
You have two choices.
Definitely that one.
Mom at soccer practice or
Definitely
homeless
this
man.
one. I don't want to leech too much, LOL.
all the way back to the start where you have an angle. Next, moving on to the half-second rule. This was also in my timing video, but I think it's absolutely vital that people know this information. Sparlow describes it here, and I'll try to give an example afterwards.
Timing needs to be with your tanks, but I would say half a second after your tanks. If I'm playing Tracer and dive and I'm trying to one-clip that Zen, I'm gonna go in right as my Winston's landing, half a second, and then now I'm going, because now that Zenyatta is fully focused on—
I want to be very clear, this is dependent on the DPS and dependent on the situation. If you're a Tracer, there's no real reason to go in afterwards, usually, if you're Genji, if you're Hanzo. But if you're talking about like the higher the risk, the easier you are to poke out, the more greedy of an angle you are, going a little bit after tanks is usually good. For example, in the Widowmaker in this situation, imagine if the Widowmaker in this situation was literally in their spawn. Like, I'm talking diametrically across the map. Then you'd want to peek a full second later, maybe even a second and a half later, because you're in such a greedy position that you need to make sure that they don't poke you out, otherwise because you're screwed. Whereas if you're inside your team, you can go at the same time as your tanks, because what are they going to do? Shoot you when you got a Reinhardt right in front of you? So a lot of it's dependent on the angle. Like, think about it as like a clock or like a degree. 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 20, 30, 40, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, you're right behind it. Then you need to go later and later and later. Does that make sense? Hope it makes sense. I'm not going to say it again.
and annihilating and beating up that Winston. He's not thinking about anything else. Okay, you're a pickpocket, right? Can you imagine how effective a pickpocket would be at like a fireworks show? There's a big firework, boom, right?
Lord Jesus, oh shit!
And that's when you reach in. They're not thinking at all what's going on behind them, right? That's a terrible analogy, but you get the idea.
Spoiler mentioned a Tracer
That's a
Winston
great
example,
analogy.
which can be shown on
I was
Nabani.
sleeping on
Your
myself.
Winston jumps on backline, and because their Ana is only looking at the Winston, you can easily get a one clip on the Ana. The last concept I'll touch on is mentality. This is actually a really overlooked aspect of not just Overwatch, but in games in general. I made an entire 10-minute video on this,
Mindset.
and I think it's one of my best videos to date, but I think the most important concept in that video is to do what others don't.
That he's always glad when something is difficult, because that means most people can't do it.
When I came to that realization, that was one of the most enlightening experiences of
True.
mana. That is one of the most important sentences you guys are ever going to hear. For Overwatch, the first tier are people who only press F1 and they read through what their abilities do, and then they play. Tier 2 are the people who go on YouTube and then they end up watching like the Angry Llama or something, or Hero Overwatch. Tier 3 are the people who have understood that there are better content creators. And
As this guy pulls up the
Tier
Angry
3
Llama.
are the people who belong to the 133.
Okay. Look what he does, guys. Me spot. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
1,000 people who have watched IOSDEX's complete Bronze to
Oh,
Alpha.
jeez.
And then we get to the...
Oh, my back is hurting so much, guys. Why is it hurting so much? Maybe I should see a doctor.
So top
Yeah, PAX play. It's coming.
tier people who review their own VODs. And when you hear that absolutely no one reviews their own VODs,
Please
you
walk
should
away
like
from the
froth
scissors.
at the mouth. Saliva should exit your mouth.
10 months ago. Oh, yeah, that's right. 10 months ago. Totally different person. My bad. My bad.
So nobody really wants to
Totally
VOD
different
review, and you need to take that opportunity.
More recently,
I'm talking over this because I'm a jackass, but that was a really good little clip that I would check out.
reframing
You know.
your mindset
Later.
of the true SR, as IOSTOX describes in his own video, is key for long-term success. True SR is just the highest SR rating you yourself would accept a boosting request of.
Cager's like a vampire. He like sits out. Oh, hello, IOSTUX. What does this hoe stuck mean? Oh, don't worry about it. You know. And then you just watch slowly as your life essence is drained away into Cager. He becomes the what is the term, like cagerdom?
Because it shows that you can comfortably play to that level.
Cagerdom.
Just because you got
like cagerdom, like kingdom, but cagerdom. Not cager is dumb, although that is a really, really funny joke. Cagerdom. Soul sucking. Arrogance, arrogance everywhere. I could not have paused it at a better frame. Thank you. Thank you.
got 3400 SR on a nice win streak, doesn't mean that you are willing to bet $500 on being able to get an account to that rating.
This is a good video, by the way. IOSTUX has been releasing some bangers when it comes to like mentality of play. I don't always agree with him when it comes to like gameplay stuff, like in terms of like positioning and things like that. But the guy knows how to coach.
Aren't willing
You should
to
listen
bet
to some
that,
of his
then
videos if you guys
3400 SR
are
simply
interested.
isn't your true SR. If I asked you to get a fresh account to 2900 SR, however, you wouldn't hesitate because you know that you can get there no problem.
SVB also has a notoriously great video on keeping a stable mental
I
and
don't think notorious is the right term, but I'll let it slide because you're not a native English.
You are not the toughest or baddest, my pennies, the maddest. I'm probably any careers on this samurai madness.
Now to the final level with the most amount of additional concepts. Let's deal with awareness first, which is essentially acknowledging your surroundings and not tunnel visioning into what's in front of you.
So again, to talk about
That's the joke, Dragonfly!
Players' awareness, it was pretty rare to find players who are preemptively looking for Doomfist. A lot of the players react to what's in front of them rather than choose.
Oh, this is a good video about Doomfist, but this is really good about just general awareness, yeah. This is kind of what I tied into like with the average thing, where like just generally knowing where your teammates are, but then now if you go to the pro thing, it's also knowing where the enemy teams are. Alarm, rest in peace, was really famous for being really good at dealing with tracers because he would know where they are. He knew the flank that they were going on through just seeing the sight lines, and he would kind of anticipate, okay, here comes the monkey, here's engaging. I know the tracer's coming, and he would preemptively defend himself with that. And obviously he had great mechanics, so like a lot of time, like awareness of your teammates and the enemy teammates, and there's so many factors to consider, but as you develop building unconscious awareness of those things through conscious awareness practice is a really good skill set as a pro.
Using to help backline dealing with Doomfist. Their vision seems to be fixated. It's almost like a one-way street. As if they have this cast on their neck when they have like neck disc or something. They can't look back, you know?
Awareness is especially important for flex support players playing against flankers.
I mean, I'm just the greatest. I mean, what kind of thing?
Making sure to anticipate threats rather than reacting to them.
Don't react, anticipate. It's about finding that balance between putting
Wait,
in
do I talk
damage
about it
like
here?
whatever your team is shooting, and then instantly anticipating this tracer ball is coming. I'm gonna turn my attention away from what
Please
I'm shooting at to check my flank. I remember back in the day. I remember when Alarm was like.
Oh
in
no, guys! I'm an old man. I repeated myself. I got caught with my pants down. I mean, to be fair, this was like a 1.5 year old clip. I am going to repeat myself sometimes because I'm never going to have the same amount of unique viewers. But this is embarrassing. This is a real low point for me, boys. I hate for y'all to see me like this. Your hero. Oof.
And one of the things that Tracers would always say that made Alarm great wasn't just his mechanics, but he seemed to always know the timing of
this, as you're trying to be aware of where the enemy team is coming from. You can fly like the top right window and then fly above that, so you can see like where they're coming from. Because if they go high ground, then maybe we back up from like the closest corner. Whereas if they're going down main, then we can hold that corner really close.
So you're basically consistently as D.Va pre-fight whenever possible, looking to scout. You know, flash your matrix so you don't get chunked down. I think be very careful that you don't get slept here. That would be really unfortunate. But yeah, basically like, you're looking to scout just so your team can use that information. And honestly, even if your team can't, you can use it.
Almost there.
There's also 3 tips you can use to help boost your awareness. The first is to look around when you're reloading or you are in between shots.
Where you're sort of like looking like this.
So, true story. Before I finished up with London, I just love how the new terminologies of ways I frame that one nowadays. I got to work with an eye tracking guy. This eye tracking scientist dude. Really smart guy. And one of the skill things that we talked about with the eye tracker was how players between fights or between shots or while reloading were using the general awareness to check flanks, check surroundings, and how that's actually an unbelievably important skill, especially for certain heroes. Good general skill to have, but if you think about like a hero like a Baptiste in a dive meta, right? Like let's say you're playing Ryan in a dive meta, if your BAP doesn't always know where the flankers are, especially in Overwatch 2, hey, goodbye, right? Really cool.
You look in another direction, right? He's checking main. Take this even a step further, right? Is like you can go further out. You don't have to just like do a short thing. You have time. You can go further out. You can even look the other way too. You can be a bit more open, right?
The second is to look around when your team is stabilizing. For instance, say you just survived the dive and are trying to stabilize. Now you can look.
Okay. Yeah, I'm drinking out of a Beatrix Potter. Okay, like it's a Peter Rabbit mug. It's all right. Look, it's great. It's really all right. I've got no shame.
Around to see any threats that you can deal with or capitalize on. The third is to look at the kill feed, a simple but underutilized tip. The kill feed can give you information on whether to play more aggressively or more defensively, which leads me nicely onto the next concept of defensive concaves. This is based on a recent video from Temporal, giving a third option on how to win a losing teamfight.
What if we backed up our BAP over here, sent our Junkrat up here, pulled our Cassidy back over to here, and then put our Lucio where we need to? This is a kill box that we've just created. And if the opponents have to pass through the kill box to get to our BAP, that's going to work pretty well for us. We get to fire in from some pretty extreme angles. If they tried to push this Cassidy falls back, and we can actually reform our concave. It's not always this clean, but you can continue to readjust and really not let this
Temporal stuff is always going to be good.
Or easy time with their cleanup there.
The first 2 options, for those who don't know, is to retreat fully, which gives up a lot of map control, or to trade out kills. For instance, if you're playing a Reinhardt mirror, and your Reinhardt blows up, you might want to trade back on the enemy Reinhardt as fast as possible, as in a 5v6 or 4v5, you'll lose the war of attrition, and their team is probably low on resources if your Reinhardt goes down. Next, I'll move on to Micro. Micro just refers to optimizing the hero's kit to suit the hero fundamental covered in level 3. For instance, this could be using Terrain on Tracer to save your soft blinks, or deciding which of your cooldowns as Brigitte should be used on enemy flankers.
Try and Savior or Flail for flankers, and use your Bash on Ball. Ball you want to keep in your team because you can punish. Flailing Ball away is like not as useful.
I would just put this as like matchup Micro, like knowing like not just knowing like what your hero does and what your hero is good at, but also knowing like the individual. It's like the car queue tips. The ironic thing is like the car queue tips just don't have a lot of relevance until you get to like the nth level, where you can start thinking about, okay, if I whip shot a ball or whip shot this or bash a ball that stops him from getting the fireball 50 damage, but if I whip, you know kind of what I'm saying, like that's the kind of stuff where those micro matchup things, knowing how to beat a Tracer, as in knowing how to, like, you are going to learn those things as you progress as a player, even in plat and gold and even silver, but they become more relevant and more important the higher rank you go. So I agree with you here.
Because, you know, inherently help is uptime. Flailing flankers is better because you force resources.
I recommend checking out Sword's hero guides, where he breaks down the kit of each hero back into pro gameplay. Now to the last 3 concepts, with one of the most important ones here being mindset. Don't confuse this with mentality covered in the previous level, as this has to do with analysing gameplay for improvements. The foundation for this comes from 3 different factors, which funnily enough is the acronym COME. The C stands for compositions.
Oh, no.
As I've already touched upon with Coach Spike. The U stands for ultimates and how they change your approach to a teamfight. And the M stands for the map that you're playing on and how the geometry changes your positioning. Here's an example of
Posture check,
VoiceCat
thank you.
gives, breaking down each part of the acronym.
Shanghai have a comp that relies on taking alternate angles and burning their enemy down with range spam to the point where they can push in and engage to clean up the fight. Atlanta, on the other hand, are playing a fairly standard rush comp. They want to look to speed boost around the map and try to catch enemies, or get into a position where they can use the objective to force the enemy into a brawl. We can imagine that Shanghai will push up and spam Atlanta to build ults, and continue to fall back and kite out until they have those ults to re-engage with. Atlanta also know that they need to contest the cart around the bookstore to have a chance at a second retake fight towards the end of streets.
Moving on to the penultimate concept in this video, ebb and flow, which can also mean push and pull. A great example can be seen with the current Junker Queen meta in the Overwatch League. The Houston Outlaws push with Rally and Bob, and the London Spitfire pull back using Rally. The Spitfire then push with Overclock, and the Outlaws push back with their own Rampage. The ebb and flow has now ended, and a full-on brawl has ensued, where the Outlaws use Blade and Beat, and the Spitfire only use Beat to respond. Here's a quick graphic showing how the push and pull cycle looks
This
like,
is cool,
all
this
the
is
way
important.
from the Bob and Rally from the Outlaws to their Blade and Beat. If you're wondering why Outlaws still lost this fight, despite investing all their ultimates, they should not have stacked their Bob or Rally, and for some reason, the Outlaws use Beats. If the Outlaws traded their ultimates a bit more effectively, they could have easily won this fight and snowballed it into a full cap. The final concept I'll move on to is communication. The golden rule with communication is that calls imply action. If you say that Zarya has Grav, that information implies that you will do something about it. For instance, countering with your own ultimate, focusing down the Zarya, playing splits so the Zarya only grabs a single person, etc. I recommend watching Nata's video on dynamic comms for more information. Well, that's the video.
Okay, so I think like overall, like I'm definitely going to give you. Crud! Beef! Good video, helpful video, pretty cool structured video. I think you could have narrowed each of the categories down a little bit. Like I think maybe not like 6 categories for pro was good, or like 4 for novice was good. I think you could have narrowed it down more. And I still think that the idea with the whole like hero fundamentals of each hero, I think like that was a video idea that like I think you went too long with it. And so it was like, is this its own? Are we going to do all of them? Are we not? What's the deal here? But I liked it. I like the fact that you used a lot of different content creators. You brought in a lot of ideas, concepts that I wouldn't have really thought to bring into, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, it was good. Still waiting for the video to be porked. Yeah. Wait, be right back. Got stream. All right, sounds good, Lethal. Thanks for coming, mate. Appreciate that. Thanks for your support. I really appreciate thank you, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I mean it was a good video. If you guys want to check that out, it's Cager. I mean, his name's literally in there, so you can look him up on YouTube. He's got a lot of really great stuff, mostly because I'm in it. It's so funny. But yeah, okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. We always like to end stream with strolling through my Discord and finding somebody that's streaming in my Discord and then hosting them. Well, that's a VTuber. No hate. Actually, just a little bit of hate. That's maybe someone that we can host. If you guys have any last questions, you can shoot them my way. Also in Discord, #AskSpilo. When I get 5+ questions, I will answer the questions and ask Spilo. And you can ask more than one question, and it is free. I do not indeed charge for questions. I'm gonna go watch the Sparker interview now. Good luck. It was a pretty good one, although his mic was horrible. The internet connection kept bugging out. We are going to do a raid. I think that's what it's called. Farewell, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate y'all's support. We will be back maybe this weekend, potentially this weekend with a companion stream. We will see. We'll definitely be back next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, y'all, first coaching session streamed live. So we're going back into coaching next Tuesday, ! Coaching. We're getting back into the swing of things. Next Tuesday is already booked. Oh no, wait, it's Tuesday today, right?
Today's Tuesday.
I'm streaming this Thursday. I don't know what day it is. I've got 3 sessions this Thursday. I'm an idiot. I think also next Tuesday is also fully booked as well. So we're starting this Thursday, those days, we're starting streaming again with coaching sessions. Yeah, of course, Trojan Thighs. Appreciate that. Can I buy a coaching session for somebody else? Yes, you can. For the coaching, do you have to be there? My times don't match up with yours. No, you do not have to be there. You do not have to be there. That's actually a good, you know what? I'm an idiot. I should have put that in the FAQ. FAQ. Such an awful word. FAQ. Do I have to be there? So sadly, I'm just not super flexible in my hours. But yeah, I mean, I can make it work. Okay. We're gonna raid Hexadec OW, and hopefully this is gonna work. This is a Masters support player in my Discord. Say hi to Pepper. I will. What does exclamation mark coaching do? It gives you information, the form on how to get coaching. If you guys have any other questions, you can just jump in my Discord and shoot me a